Joining us this morning for Good Morning Kenya. This is KBC Channel 1. I'm Regina Manyara. Glad to have you on board. Thursday is the new Friday, as you said, as we focus on topical issues. And this morning we're going to be talking about mental wellness. Yes, one out of four Kenyans is undergoing a mental issue. That is according to the Ministry of Health. And we'll be hearing from parents and children as to what are their triggers and how are they better taking care of themselves in regard to mental wellness and health. A time when Kenyans, or rather most people, stakeholders and Kenyans at large, are urging the president to declare mental illness as a public health crisis. This is, what stakeholders from the Ministry of Health, as well as just, even the society at large, is saying that the president needs to declare mental illness as a public health crisis. That and so much more is going to be featuring in today's broadcast. Remember, we are live from right about now, some minutes after 7, all the way to 10 a.m. So do keep it right here, and we welcome your feedback in regard to topical issues that you're going to be highlighting in the course of this broadcast, including that issue on mental wellness and what an individual can do to ensure that they just maintain their sanity. We're going to be having professionals on board and also taking your feedback. Our website is www.kbc.co. My Twitter handle is @Manyara. Give us that feedback. What do you think about mental wellness, and what are you doing as an individual to ensure that you remain sane? Good morning once again. Glad to have you on board.
Well, and even as we keep up with the topical issues and what has been affecting us as a country, with all the discussions that are slated for today, we'll still continue to look at for you what has been happening on our major roads in terms of traffic. And this morning, we stretch it a little bit further. We go all the way to the city of Mombasa. Remember that in Nairobi, we've been seeing a lot of reconstruction processes happening on our major roads, and it comes to also things such as installation of footbridges, especially on major highways. So this morning, we try and look at what has been happening in Mombasa City. Has the same been happening in terms of road reconstruction or even bridges installation? What has been happening when it comes to matters traffic? That will be our focus this morning on that link-up segment. Also, we shall be coming back to Nairobi to just try and look at how Uhuru Highway will be doing this morning, given the fact that it's one of those busy highways as it connects to a number of major roads and also the number of roundabouts along this highway, quite a number of them. So that's why this morning we shall also be focusing on what will be happening along Uhuru Highway. Many thanks for making time this Thursday morning. My name is Doreen Arange.
The headlines begins right about now, and let's look at the stories that have made it to the dailies this morning on the 9th of July 2020. Front page of the Star: why Ruto will not quit Kenyatta's Jubilee yet. Over the last few months, we've been seeing leaders allied to the deputy president facing the axe in various committees, whether in the Senate or in the National Assembly. And the header there is why Ruto will not quit Kenyatta's Jubilee yet. Pictured there is a deputy president and President Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, the DP wants to use his office to continue exercising influence ahead of 2022. Do you think so? We'll be getting a sneak peek of that particular story as captured by the Star this morning. Now, Caleb Kostani: we are going nowhere and the DP will not resign despite the frustration. What we have done for Jubilee and this government must count and will count. Let's check out page 6. Now, Ruto will not resign or quit Jubilee, but has big plans for 2022, his allies claim. Now, Kikuyu MP Kimani Ichung'wah, another close ally of DP, said the dynasties are pulling strings behind the scenes to have run out of ideas after realizing that the hurdles they have all along set for Ruto have failed. Kenyans who share in the vision of a united and prosperous Kenya, where we all focus on our strength in unity without regard as to whether we are rich, poor, to one's religion or ethnicity, to transform our nation to a progressive people-centered nation of one people. Quoted there also is Uasin Gishu woman representative Gladys Bose-Shuley, another victim of anti-Ruto purge in parliament, said while it's not a must for DP to attend such meetings, it is a primitive at this day and age to humiliate and undermine a constitutional office holder. Remember, yesterday's one of the headers that we had captured by the dailies, rather than media, was Ruto has been missing apparently from key meetings, and there his allies say that it is not necessary for him to attend such, and it's quite a low blow there, as the boss Shelley has said, is that it's actually primitive at this day and age to humiliate and undermine a constitution or office holder. What's your take in regard to that particular opinion there, as expressed by DP allies, saying that he's staying put, he's not going anywhere, and that his contribution to Jubilee and the government must count? That is Caleb Kosteni, one of DP allies, vocal DP allies, there, saying that Ruto is not ready to quit Jubilee yet. What is your take?
Well, and this morning, still keeping up with our segment in the headlines on the front page of the Standard, matters to do with education this early morning, where the caption just reads, "Why teachers are lucky." It continues to say that tutors employed by the government to continue enjoying their salaries for no work, at least for now, even as those in private schools resort to ingenuity and odd jobs to ride out virus. This story has been well fleshed out from page 6 through page 10 of the Standard. We'll be unpacking more of that as we look inside of what is more inside the paper concerning matters education. Still on the front page, matters to do with politics. Mount Kenya leaders private lunch rallies behind Kimunya just says that 9 political bigwigs from Uhuru's backyard offers support to the new National Assembly Majority Leader and the President's agenda. Now, this is Amos Kimunya, who is now the current National Assembly Majority Leader he replaced Eden Duale. Again, on the sidebar of the same paper, a birthday, a rape, and a foul murder. This is just a story of a birthday that went wrong. Still again on the sidebar of the same paper, CS Amina to battle it out for WTO post. Yesterday there was a hashtag that was trending on Twitter, and Kenyans were asking, why is it only CS Amina who's normally picked for this position? Well, we'll get to see why she's normally the one who's picked for this position. But it just says that Kenya nominates Sports Cabinet Secretary, that is Amina Mohammed, for the position of Director General of the World Trade Organization. But at least that's what is on the front page of the Standard this morning. But as I had told you, matters to do with education dominating the paper this morning. So let's just unpack what is inside the paper when it comes to matters education this early morning, and which set of teachers are these who are set to benefit in as much as they are not working. The caption reading, TSC teachers to get their salaries despite being idle. So these are the Teachers Service Commission, and it just says that teachers in public, primary, secondary, teacher training and technical colleges employed by the government will continue to to enjoy their salaries for no work, at least for now. So, however, teachers employed by Board of Management as well as other non-teaching staff face uncertainty as government is non-committal on releasing funding to schools. So the teachers who are set to benefit amid the adverse effects of COVID-19 in as much as they are not working, these are teachers from the TSC, which is the Teachers Service Commission. Nothing has been said about private school teachers yet, but still again on matters education, there's still a caption here that reads, huge losses as food stock wasted in schools closure. Remember on the presser that was given by the Education Cabinet Secretary, Professor George Magoha, he said that schools are set to reopen next year, that is January. So what of these food stocks that are already been stocked by these schools? Now, huge supplies of food acquired for learners in boarding schools risk going to waste should the institutions fail to find a way to dispose them. This is in the coming weeks. Now, with the reopening of schools pushed to January next year, Several principals of boarding schools are scratching their heads on what to do with these stocks. Remember that schools were shut down after the country recorded its first case of COVID-19, and this was on March 13th. Now, this situation is worse for institutions that enrolled more Form 1 students and were compelled to increase their supplies. Now, this is just what is facing different schools across the country when it comes to the food stocks that they had acquired for the students, given the fact that schools are slated to be opened early next year. So what about the next coming months, and what about those foods that already been stocked by the schools? That is the dilemma being faced by principals in different schools, that is in both primary as well as secondary schools. But again, also keeping up with matters education, we had talked about the teachers from the Teachers Service Commission who are said to benefit, but what about those in private institutions? Now, this is what they're saying. Please give us any job. Teachers are now pleading. Private school associations says more than 300,000 people have been rendered jobless by decision to close school till 2021. And there's a story here of a school teacher, that is Dixon Karoki, who describes the last 3 months as extremely painful and confusing. And as a teacher of arts and craft at a private school in Nairobi, he had great plans with his student, but COVID-19 outbreak changed all that. And now he is slowly accepting that his career path has been changed forever. From time the first case was reported in the country, that was on 13th March, after which schools were closed nationally, that the teacher, which is Dixon Karoki, has not been paid. Now, that is just the dilemma of private schools teachers there, who are now decrying and crying that any job, they're comfortable with doing any job, since as of now they do not have any payment, any sort of salary.
Now, still keeping up with the story that has made headlines in several dailies this morning is the issue of, schools reopening and what happens to the monies that parents had paid for second term and third term. Now, this is a reprieve as school to refund fees paid in advance. President Kenyatta closed schools on March 15th, 4 weeks to the scheduled end of the first term on April 10th, to protect the lives of learners and teachers. Now, parents who had paid for second term and third terms will either get back their cash or have their fees credited to the next year, when the schools are expected to begin the academic year afresh. More details pertaining this particular issue, especially now at a time when parents are grappling with a high cost of living, has indeed come in handy. Quoted there is that the Kenya Private Schools Association Chief Executive Peter Ndoro echoed Mr. Indimuli's sentiment, saying schools are not in a position to refund second and third term fees. We appreciate the efforts of the parents who settled the fees for the whole year, but the money will be transferred to the next academic year. As a parent, do you think you want a refund, or you want the monies to remain in check for you so that you do not have to pay once a school resumes in January? That is part of the question that we're asking in terms of feedback. What do you think about this directive? Do you want your school fees back, or do you want it to stay, in holding within the school so that you don't have to pay again? Then the question comes in, especially in private schools. What happens to the teachers who also double up as parents elsewhere? How are they going to earn their keep during this time, since now this is a protracted holiday necessitated by COVID-19? To put matters into perspective in regard to the standard that the education sector has taken in regard to the reopening of schools and what happens to the monies paid in advance, here's a report by Ben Chumba.
A day after the Ministry of Education announced the 2020 basic education academic year is considered lost due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha has moved to address concerns raised by parents, especially those with children in private schools, regarding school fees payment for the academic year 2021. Professor Magoha has directed all primary and secondary schools across the country to refund school fees paid in advance for the second and third terms.
Second term, if you had paid earlier, it will be refunded to you, or it will go into account for the second term. Yeah. And third term. I don't know why Kenyans are very complicated people. It's simple and straightforward. Yeah. If for any particular reason there was a calamity, for example, in the school, and the head teacher had to do something that required you to endorse, he will sit down with you and agree.
The Education Cabinet Secretary who toured the Coast Institute of Technology in Voi, Taita Taveta County, however, clarified first-term fees cannot be refunded.
Let us be realistic here. The first term's fees was spent and it is lost. So don't even think that we are going to sit down with you to waste time saying, oh, there were 10 days in first term. That one is not going to be there.
The move to postpone reopening of schools to January 2021 has drawn mixed reactions. Amani National Congress Party leader Musalia Mudavadi says parents and children will now have ample time to plan.
We cannot change direction in the midstream to pretend that all is well, when we know that exam syllabuses will not be covered. We cannot have exams when syllabuses have not been covered. It will throw the integrity of the exams and the education system into the international disrepute, and we certainly do not want to go that way.
Mudavadi has in the meantime called for a review of online learning spearheaded by the Ministry of Education through the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, saying learners from underprivileged backgrounds cannot access the internet or channels being used to disseminate broadcast and online content.
Not every learner has access to radio or TV, and less still to the internet. Even those who can physically access these facilities are challenged with the costs of activating them. Let us not cheat ourselves. Let us accept that things are bad.
Ben Chumba, reporting for Channel 1 News.
Now, still keeping up with the domino effect of COVID-19 is that 21 counties seek more time to buy isolation beds. Yesterday, we just highlighted just among, how prepared these counties are, and we found that even some didn't have, any ventilator or any ICU bed, so to speak of. Now, the devolved units have acquired 10,000 beds out of the 30,500. Pardon me for that. It's not corona. Well, that the president had ordered there. Now, 21 counties have 2 weeks to meet the president's target of 30,500, or rather 300 isolation beds, at the time when the president has said that 30,500 is what they need in terms of isolation beds. 21 counties there set to meet that threshold. At the same time, Kagwe says that patients are to be treated where they are. We are now dealing with virus which is well established at the community level. All counties expect 5 have reported COVID-19 cases. Now, yesterday the country recorded 278 new infections from a sample of 3,053 tests, bringing the national case load to 8,528. Now, the new cases are distributed in 14 counties, with Nairobi leading with 131 cases, Kiambu 32, Busia 29, Migori 23, Machakos 20, Kajiado 13, Taita Taveta 8, Vihiga 7, Mombasa 5, Nakuru 4, with Isiolo and Makueni recording 2 cases each. Meru and Kisii counties have recorded a case each. That is just a summary of, the COVID-19 status as it is. Now, there was also a COVID-19 scare in Juja after a taxi driver died in his car. Now, the scene caught the eyes of many at a time when almost every move and incident is deemed suspicious. And in the video posted on social media on Monday, 3 people in the white suits and other protective clothing are covering and zipping up a man in a body bag. More reason why you should remain safe, mask, sanitize, as we go. We've already been told that this virus doesn't move itself. You and I move it. Also captured on the front page of the Star in regards to just, the level of preparedness in as far as Kenyans is concerned. There is a revelation here is that why Kenyans could face extra COVID-19 control measures. Now, according to the WHO, this means that we might face a stricter public health measures if the WHO backs evidence that the coronavirus transmission is airborne. Yeah, this means that you can contract the virus by breathing in microscopic particles that have been floating in the air for hours. If WHO backs this, then we might face stricter measures at a time when Kenyans have been saying that, the executive needs to just ease up some of these measures, and we saw that. And now we can move in and out from hotspots, considered hotspots, that is Nairobi, Manyara, and Mombasa. Some sort of good news is that a student has made a COVID nasal swab for mass production. Now, a Kenyatta University student has invented a cheap and easily produced nasal swab to fill Kenya's desperate shortfall and test for COVID-19. Simon Dirango, age 28, a fourth-year student in biotechnology, is making the medical device using 3D printers that can produce 3,000 pieces per day. That is good news indeed. Necessity is a mother of invention, and that young man there might have just solved a main issue when it comes to deficit, and also aided, the powers that be, and that is the Ministry of Health, to ensure that we continue doing mass testing. As they say, the more we test, the more we get numbers, but it's good for fiscal planning.
Now, still on matters COVID-19, there's a similar story again on the Standard with what WHO thinks on whether or not COVID could be spread in air, where it just says that it's emerging, but not quite there's no quite definitive evidence. This is from a group of experts that coronavirus can be airborne, but the World Health Organization is in the process of reviewing evidence by experts that seem to indicate that the virus that causes COVID-19 is airborne in certain settings. So now it's not quite definitive evidence yet that COVID could be airborne, but now health bodies say evidence is, it's not definitive, but notes there is a transmission chance in crowded, closed or poorly ventilated air. So in as much as there's no definite evidence yet, but at least what they're saying is that transmission of this virus, especially in crowded or closely poorly ventilated areas, it could be transmitted through air. But that's why then they continue to tell us that to keep and stay safe and to follow all the protocols and guidelines that have been given by the WHO, as well as even here in the country by the Ministry of Health.
Now, since we're waiting to see the direction that the WHO is going to take in regard to just backing that COVID-19 is indeed a spread, airborne, the airborne transmissions of COVID-19, we want to take you back to the local scene and focus at how prepared or not counties are in as far as, bed capacity is concerned, the ventilators, the ICU beds and isolation wards. A report compiled by reporter Irene Mchuma Odim puts that into perspective.
COVID-19 cases have spread to the community level, and county governments are working towards attaining 300 bed capacity requirements by the close of July. The Council of Governors says 26 counties have complied with the President's directive on isolation facilities, and 21 more are still struggling.
Non-availability of testing cartridges, lack of infrastructure for mass testing has obscured the true reflection of the spread of the virus, therefore posing a risk of increased community transmission. Despite the availability of general expert machines in all counties, testing has been hindered due to lack of cartridges.
According to the council, 38 counties have trained an additional 846 healthcare workers, bringing the total to 19,177 of those who now have knowledge on how to manage the pandemic. 9,858 healthcare workers have been recruited and reported to varied workstations in counties to help the already struggling workforce.
All counties must ensure that public places are well equipped with sanitation facilities as preventive measures as paramount towards capping transmission of the disease.
The council is warning that counties will not be able to deal with the surge in the pandemic cases, pleading with Kenyans to strictly adhere to set regulations. He expressed fears that if Kenyans fail to observe self-discipline, the numbers will be scary.
Even if people are traveling from here to Kakamega, there must be protocol in the public transport, must be there. And that's why we are saying that those thermal guns must be used before people enter the vehicle. Secondly, distancing must be there. You don't squeeze yourself in the bus the way we used to do.
Irene Mchuma Odim, Channel 1.
Now we're still looking at the domino effect of COVID-19. We have quite a catchy header there, captured by one of the dailies there. Getting out of the city. Captured there's a woman with a baby on her back and some large bags there. Evelyn Yaboke awaits transport to Kisii at the Transline offices in Nairobi. You know, experts have been saying that, you know, with the the ban on the cessation of movement in and out of Nairobi, we are likely to see urban-rural migration, especially from peri-urban areas to the countryside. Now, as it is that only COVID-19 certified matatus will be allowed on the roads. Now, PSV operators have been asked to seek clearance from health and transport ministries, and the measures, just some of the measures that have been put in place, is that air travel and SGR services are to resume. Airport terminal access will from now be restricted to workers and travelers only, except for cases where travelers need special assistance, and measures are in place to minimize contact between the crew and passengers. In regard to the SGR, the Kenya Railways will deploy 10 coaches for passengers with a total one-way capacity of 600 passengers, 50% capacity, and an additional coach to isolate passengers suspected to be infected with COVID-19. When you come back to the road, only matatus that have complied with the government protocols on COVID-19 will be allowed to travel into and out of Nairobi as well as other counties. Now, Mr. Mashari nonetheless indicated that whereas it would not be possible to test the passengers, all other safety measures will have to be observed. He urged the crew and passengers to protect each other. The crew should ensure all passengers sanitize, wear a mask properly, and have their temperatures checked before they board the vehicles.
Well, still on matters transport, remember that flights are set to resume, and yesterday the transport CS, that is James Macharia, issued a press on the guidelines, especially when it comes to the transport sector and also what flights are expected to do. There's a caption here that just reads, "No quarantine, distancing on flights in new guidelines," and it says that people arriving into the country will not need to go for the 14 days quarantine unless they are showing signs of coronavirus. That is what the transport CS says. And he said only people with signs such as high temperatures will be put on mandatory quarantine when flights resume on August 1st of this year. The CS also said airlines will not have to drastically reduce the number of passengers for them to fly, saying that if they carried less than 75% in their flights, they would incur losses. Now, this is a question of losses as opposed to safety, and that is why yesterday when you're looking at what was trending on Twitter, it was all about Kenyans just wondering which way, because it is a question of safety. It's a question of safety versus the losses. And when the CS say that passengers wouldn't be tested, yet there are protocols and guidelines being put in the country, is it a question of double standards?
Now, the new measures, according to the Transport Cabinet Secretary Mashari there, says are geared towards stimulating the Kenya tourism sector, which has been badly hit by the global pandemic. And for those in public transport sector, there will be no shortcuts, and all of them must conform to the guidelines issued by the government. Edward Kabasa has more on that report.
Transport Cabinet Secretary James Macharia says it is all systems go for the movement of passengers in and out of restricted areas in the country.
All passengers shall be exempt from quarantine on arrival at their destinations if their body temperatures is not above 37.5 degrees Celsius, because you do not expect a tourist to come from wherever. They land here and then they are quarantined for 14 days. Nobody will come here.
The government had made it mandatory that every person jetting into the country must undergo a 14-day quarantine in a bid to curb the spread of COVID-19, but this has now been relaxed and will be subjected to only those with COVID-19-like symptoms. From Monday 8 a.m., the Madaraka Express will begin a daily commute between Nairobi and Mombasa, albeit at 50% capacity.
Kenya Railways will deploy or shall deploy 10 coaches for passengers with a total one-way capacity of 600 passengers.
Macharia said an extra coach will be made available to serve as an isolation facility should anyone on board the Madaraka Express exhibit symptoms of COVID-19. To enhance safety in the public road transport, the government is implementing the protocol for those in the sector. The code specifies measures to be taken to enforce physical distancing, facilitate contact tracing, and manage suspected COVID-19 cases.
It's not feasible to insist that if you are going into a long distance bus at the Nazma we're tested.
We would want also to call upon the county government to provide the washing spaces at the main terminals of the buses. Because without that, really, we won't have so much sanitizer to provide for all the commuters that do render services to us.
People must adhere to these regulations. People must make sure that they have masks, and those who are in the vehicles must be told there's no moment they'll remove their masks.
The government says it is confident that the measures put in place will assist in the containment of the coronavirus.
Transport, now coming to matters to do with gender-based violence and what has been happening in different parts of the country in regards to that. There's a story here, a rather sad story, where a birthday went wrong. A birthday, rape and murder, most foul. But what do the police know when it comes to this incident? It just says that orphanage's managers admits he summoned Mwiruri over claims he had sexually assaulted a girl, says he was killed outside their gate. Now, on June 8th, that is, Reginald Odhiambo invited friends to the orphanage he runs on Mombasa to celebrate his 30th birthday. And amongst those in attendance were Josephat Mwiruri, who was summoned. He's a student and he had recently dropped out of college, and also others were just 70 children of varied ages at the institution, and that is the Hope for Hope Center. Now, this was a birthday that was supposed to be celebrated. Different people had been invited, but it just looked like the birthday went wrong, as a young girl was sexually assaulted, raped, and even murdered. And so now they summoned Mwiruri, who is 25 years old, over claims of that sexual assault and the murder of that girl. But the question still lingers and remains: what do the police know about this case? What really is happening in our country when it comes to matters gender-based violence and matters sexual assault? And that is the same question which we've just been asking time and again. Is it that people have so much time on their hands, not knowing exactly what to do with it? That's why they're resorting to things such as this: gender-based violence, sexual assault.
Now, this comes at a time when President Uhuru Kenyatta, when delivering his speech early this week, called on, the relevant authorities to just prepare a report as to why there's been an increase cases in gender-based violence, especially targeting children. In what is seen as a win for child rights activists, well, it's the high time that we put this into perspective there. Now, gender-based violence cases in the country have significantly increased, with Well, how about that? We can also make fun about that. No sooner had we talked about violence until the lights decided to just, do a flicker. Anyway, the gender-based violence cases in the country have significantly increased, with statistics indicating 834 cases were recorded by the third week of June 2020, compared to 86 cases in February, before the onset of the coronavirus pandemic. UN Women Country Director Anne Mtavati says the global crisis continues to expose women and girls to much greater risks that need urgent intervention. Kamche Medza has more details on this.
Kenya on Wednesday recorded 278 new COVID-19 cases, raising the country's caseload to 8,528. Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe said the new cases were detected from 3,053 samples.
We have some 8,528 people who have contacted the virus. Out of this number, 44 are from Makueni County, from a sample size of 299.
CS Kagwe, who spoke when he toured Makueni County to assess their COVID-19 preparedness, further added that 257 healthcare workers, 4 of them in Makueni, have tested positive for COVID-19 while in the line of duty.
For all those who have been exposed, I want to assure them that the government is committed to ensuring that all our frontline soldiers are protected at all times by making available the necessary PPEs and other commodities. I therefore want to take this opportunity to thank all healthcare workers for putting their lives at risk as they manage our patients.
The Health CS assuring a seamless working relation between the two levels of government to ensure the pandemic is contained.
As we work to upgrade our facilities, we must remind ourselves that prevention is always, and has always been, better than cure. Let us all embrace the containment measures in order for this to be what is effective and in place. Of particular importance is to keep the measures that have been given. Curfew has not been lifted, so it must be continued.
In the last 24 hours, 2 Kenyans have succumbed to the coronavirus, taking the tally of fatalities in the country to 169. 89 patients have since been discharged from various health facilities within the same period. The number of recoveries now stand at 2,593. So far, the country has tested 196,509 samples. Purity Museo, Channel 1 News.
Well, and away from that story, which is probably not what you had read because it was matters to do with gender-based violence,
yes,
but...
And Doreen, before we even get back to Speak Matters business, because we've been highlighting the issue of gender-based violence.
Exactly.
So there was a report that was prepared by CAMCHE, just highlighting what the UN has had to say about the increase in cases, of gender-based violence. And it would go a long way to just shed light, just ahead before we speak about matters of mental wellness there, where we had, Kobia there, Madam Kobia, Professor Kobia there, also gracing this particular, function there, being that she represents the youth in as far as we're concerned, and this is greatly affecting them at this point. How about we have a sneak peek of the sounds and pictures from that particular report?
In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, the female gender is said to be most vulnerable to its effects compared to the male gender. Cases of gender-based violence and teenage pregnancies are on the rise. UN Women Country Director Anne Mutavati says Kenya's national GBV hotline 1195 showed cases have increased by 775% since COVID-19 pandemic struck the country.
So in actual numbers, we have at the third week of June 834 cases that have gone through reported gender-based violence cases, compared to 86 only in February before the COVID-19 started.
The shocking statistics were revealed during the handover of COVID-19 food and non-food donations to the Parliamentary Women Caucus leaders for distribution to vulnerable groups.
35% of cases that were reported on sexual violence in the first 2 weeks of COVID-19 were on sexual violence.
Wherever a woman is battered, a child is either physically battered or emotionally battered. And so you must see that from a gender perspective or gender lens. And you must see also a child that has either learned that gender violence is normal. And so it becomes very hard to eradicate device.
How do we move from here? We already have the numbers. We already have the statistics. How do we move from here? I think it would be good to be able to follow up with the direction given by the president so that we can be able to bring the change that is required.
Public Service and Gender Affairs Cabinet Secretary Margaret Kobia called for tougher penalties for perpetrators.
And there are many interventions to prevent teenage pregnancies. Counseling from the parents, counseling from the community, avoiding incidences and awareness that will prevent girls getting into that. In fact, if they are very young and they are under 18, they are being abused. That is an defilement. Therefore, we want to prevent, and where people have been found to have abused girls, we want also maximum punishment.
At the same time, women caucus leaders have vowed not to support the proposed merger of groups supporting women, such as Women Enterprise Fund, Uwezo Fund, and National Gender and Equality Commission.
Now, again, a move has been brought to collapse Kenya National Human Rights Commission with GEC. When did you ever hear Kenya National Human Rights Commission lobbying, advocating, fighting, defending women issues? So again, that's a policy that the government should not think about.
Over 71,000 vulnerable groups have benefited from over 6.1 billion shillings donated in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Gender Impact Survey is expected to be out by end of July to inform policy and budget decisions as efforts to eradicate the vice gear up. On Monday, President Uhuru Kenyatta ordered for the formation of a direct National Crime Research Center to prove cases of GBV, teenage pregnancies, and violation of children's rights. Kamchemenza for Channel 1 News.
Now, away from matters gender-based violence and what is happening in different parts of the country in regards to matters sexual assault and GBV, we now want to move to stories making headlines when it comes to matters business this morning on our dailies. And there's an interesting story on the Standard this morning when it comes to matters business, where Kenya's huge debt obligations, second highest in Africa, and this is just Kenya's debt service obligations have risen sharply to become the second highest in Africa after Ethiopia. So Ethiopia is the first country in the African continent, and this is a new report. The report is dubbed African Development Outlook 2020 by the African Development Bank, or if you may, the AFDB, and it has, however, vouched for Kenya's economy to be less hurt by the COVID-19 pandemic due to its diversified nature. Now, the African Development Bank has projected the country's gross domestic product to expand by 1.4%, a more optimistic projection than the International Monetary Fund projection of the negative 0.3%. So what the African Development Bank is saying that at least Kenya's economy hasn't been that much affected, and they are alluding this due to the diversified nature of Kenya's economy. On the top side of the same paper, there's still on matters businesses, where confirmed virus cases put heavy cost on companies. These are different companies across the country which have been affected by the adverse effects of COVID-19, and companies, especially banks, are having to contend with business disruption, including temporary closures after confirming positive cases of this virus. For instance, the Absa Bank has become the latest firm to report positive cases in some of its branches, prompting it to kickstart containment measures to protect staff and clients and also ensure smooth business continuity. So this is what different companies across the country are doing, at least to protect its clients as well as employees from the adverse effects of COVID-19. A case in point, that is the Absa Bank there.
Now, still keeping up with matters business, remember in some of the proposals that had been made in the Finance Act Bill 2020 was the issue of not credit lenders, defaulters, especially in the digital lending platform. Let me give you, for example, if you have a loan with M-Shwari, if you have a loan with, these fintechs, let me just mention them, Branch and such. Well, the directive was given that Central Bank said that unlisted those fintech players, or rather digital lenders that are not regulated cannot then have you listed and on the Credit Reference Bureau, what you call CRB. Now, those particular digital lenders have expressed reservations about that recent CBK, the recent CBK of Bank Kenya directive restricting unregulated lenders from listing defaulters at the Credit Reference Bureau, saying the move will only reduce gains made in widening financial inclusion. Now, the Digital Lenders Association spokesperson, Kevin Mutiso, attributes the high interest rate on loans on operational costs in the digital lending environment. Here's a report by Benson Rioba. Just maybe to elaborate exactly on what digital lending, or rather what digital lenders are you know, those softwares that you get your money at the touch of a button. Well, CBK has given a directive restricting unregulated lenders from listing defaulters from rather at the Credit Reference Bureau. They argue themselves that this move will only reduce gains made in widening financial inclusion. And in any case, if you're wondering why, if you go for that soft loan, you know, on your phone, why it is expensive, they're saying that the high interest rate on loans is on operational costs, you know, in the digital lending environment. What is your take? We want to remind you that we welcome your feedback in regard to all the stories that we have keenly highlighted for you during this show, and this is one of them. Do you think that, what do you think about this particular move now with the digital lenders saying they are not for, you know, not listing, they'd want to list defaulters on the Credit Reference Bureau? That and so much more, www.kbc.co.ke. In not too long, we're also going to be talking about mental wellness, at a time when a report has already been handed over to the president that says that 1 out of 10 people in Kenya is suffering from one mental issue or another. When we're going to be talking to parents, we're going to be talking to professionals, we're going to be talking to children, because we also believe that they have their own, you know, stress triggers and how they are dealing with this issue that is threatening to take over, you know, the society as we see it. So do keep texting. We're already getting feedback on social media, especially on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at Manyara. Our official station handle is at KBC Channel 1 News. So I don't know if we have that report ready yet in regard to that particular story that I've highlighted for you there on digital lending.
Heavily in broadband infrastructure. Currently, the country is linked to the rest of the world via at least 5 high-speed undersea fiber cables. In addition, the government has invested in linking all 47 county headquarters with high-speed internet. And on Wednesday, Telecom and Loon announced the availability of 4G mobile internet service via the Loon technology to Kenyans.
In places where people have not had network, they've not had the need to buy a device.
The government is keen on Kenyans tapping this internet to generate income or offer services. However, availability and the cost of smartphones has been a barrier for some. Musheru says Kenya is at an advanced stage of starting the production of smartphones locally.
We have already in Dedan Kimathi University, there's already work going on in terms of producing our own devices, so manufacturing them. This is something we've learned from the digital literacy program, where we've been assembling the tablets for schools.
Using the just launched Loon technology, President Uhuru Kenyatta addressed Baringo residents via the cabinet secretary's smartphone.
Mheshimiwa CS ako hapa na sisi, tunashukuru sana kama wakaaji wa Baringo, Mheshimiwa Rais.
Asante sana, na tunataka hiyo iendelee kwetu, kwa sababu najua vijana mkiwa na internet, mkiwa na connectivity, hiyo ni online job kwenu, hiyo ni mambo mengi ambayo mtaweza kufanya mkiwa manyumbani, kuwe na contract na kila katika dunia mzima.
The solar-powered loons fly tens of thousands of kilometers above sea level.
We've been spending a lot of money and time using the Universal Service Fund to ensure we have full connectivity in the country. But with the help of Alphabet Loan, the Google Loan company, as well as Telecom Kenya, now we can be able to cover the whole country in a very short span of time to ensure that everybody has 4G connectivity.
Well, and that story probably takes us to another business story before we wrap our segment. In the headlines, there's an interesting story that I just saw on our papers, and this is in regards to what the Kenya National Highways authorities are doing, and they're planning an audit of an expressway where KENHA, that is the Kenya National Authorities, or if you may, KENHA, has now started the search for a firm which will audit the construction of the Nairobi Expressway project. The 60 billion Kenya shillings road projects, which will start at Mlolongo to James Gishuru Road in Westlands, broke ground in October last year. It is expected to be completed in December 2022. Now, this is what the Kenya National Highways Authority are planning to do. Now, if you are someone who really uses the city center a lot, or even coming to Nairobi, then you will see a lot of what KENHA as well as KURA have done. KENHA is the Kenya National Highways Authority. KURA is the Kenyan Urban Roads Authority. You will see the kind of works they have done in terms of road reconstruction, in terms of bridge installations, ensuring also at least there's pedestrian walkways as well as cyclist lanes, and also ensuring that roads become passable for pedestrians as well as just vehicles, both public and private. And now this is another project which they are slated to, which already started in October last year, and it's expected to end in December 2022. It will start from Lolongo all the way to James Gishuru in Westlands. And still around Lolongo, there's another footbridge that was also installed there by KENHA again, and this was just to ease on the traffic flow, ease on the traffic congestion, and also just to ensure that they reduce on the number of death cases as you use Mombasa Road, given that that is one of those roads that normally high death cases were being recorded. So these are some of the projects that have been done by KENHA, and these are some of the projects that are slated to also continue to be done by the same body, that is the Kenya National Highways Authority. Now just to the last story in matters business. From my end, this is Safaricom unveiling Android TV box, where the company has now launched an Android TV box as part of a strategy to bring its home fiber services to more homes. Now, this TV box equips any TV with capability to stream content from sites such as YouTube, Netflix, Showmax, as well as Sling. So this is more of a reprieve to home users as now Safaricom unveils an Android TV box for them.
Now, still keeping up with business is that the Galana Kulalu irrigation project will be subjected to a viability test before being handed over to the private sector. The National Development Technical Implementation Committee Chairperson Dr. Karanja Kebesho, who spoke after leading senior government officials, among them 9 principal secretaries, on a site visit to the project, said they had been impressed with the progress of the 10,000-acre model farm. The National Irrigation Authority is seeking 600 million shillings to complete the remaining work at the model farm.
The model farm at the Galana Kulalu Food Security Project will once again undergo a visibility study before being contracted to a new company after the National Irrigation Authority severed its ties with the initial contractor, Green Arava. The Israeli embassy had hinted that talks between the Kenyan and Israeli governments could end the contract stalemate. However, this seems not to be viable after the National Irrigation Authority has received the government's backing to source new contractors to complete the project.
There has been issues between the client and the contractor that has led to the slow pace in which this project has been implemented, and also some suspected loss of revenue.
To this end, the National Development Technical Implementation Committee says it will lobby the National Treasury to release 600 million shillings to the National Irrigation Authority to complete the remaining 15% of works at the model farm.
The ministry has estimated that with about 700 million, they should be able now to complete the infrastructure development that's required to do the remaining 4,800 acres.
While the biggest junk is under maize crop, 10 acres is under other crops such as banana and cashew nuts. The government had earmarked 10,000 acres in the expansive Galana Kulalu Ranch to be put under irrigation at a cost of 7.3 billion shillings, with Green Arava only completing 85% of the work, despite having been paid 5.95 billion shillings. Benson Rioba reporting for Channel 1 Business.
Now, as we come to a close of in the headlines, is that we want to appreciate your feedback, and we have Martin Omieri on Twitter saying, hashtag good morning Kenya, good morning Ray, good morning Doreen. Hayo Village Busia, I hope I pronounced it correctly. Hayo Village Busia, tuko ndani ya show pamoja na mzee Gaetano Ankuri, Mama Evelyn Huka, Brother Namo the Marito, Penina Florence, Lauren Rocha, Mary Edward, Eliud Lavin, Reverend John Omieri, Peter Chiang, Fred Kalule Wanyonyi, and Reverend Peter Omuholo. Well, we're glad that you're watching from Busia. Do keep it right here. Remember, we're also engaging you what to think about the issue of mental illness. This comes at a time when, declare mental illness a public health crisis. This is what stakeholders from various factions are saying and telling the president, because apparently in a report that was handed to President Uhuru Kenyatta, is that 1 in every 10 Kenyans has one form of mental disorder. And this morning on hashtag Kids Talk, we're going to be listening in on, the views that children have in regard to mental wellness, especially now that they're going to be spending for the next 6 months at home. What do they think? What is making them uncomfortable, or what are their stress triggers? And also hearing from the parents, given that there's a report that shows that a majority of low-income earners in Nairobi with children at home say feeding them is the greatest challenge. Is this the source of the stress that you as a mom or a dad or a guardian is going through? And is this in one way or another, affecting issues of mental wellness? That is going to be put into perspective in not long. Remember, we are live and we are expecting your feedback. The hashtag is KBC Kids Talk, as well as hashtag Doreen. Doreen will also be engaging in that conversation just to find out what do you think about mental wellness as it is as a grown-up. Doreen, I know I'm not going to refer to you as a child. I would want to know what you think about the issue of mental wellness.
Well, before I chime into that and what my thoughts are in regards to mental illness, Ray, I've loved that comment that you read from Busia, just showing that how people from
yeah, Kutuma Salam.
Hey, how people from the western part of the country, place where I come from, they watch the show with everyone, even those toddlers, and they make sure that they mention to you everyone who is watching the show. And that's what we're encouraging you this early morning, that keep watching the show. Send us your feedback in regards to the kind of conversations we'll be having this Thursday morning. And also when it comes to matters to do with mental wellness and mental health, given the fact that just what Ray has said, that now the children will be home for longer, and they were already home as early as March, and they're expected to still be in the houses and in homes till early next year. And the conversation is around how well and how safe are they in terms of their mental capacity and capability. Remember that so much information is already out there. There's so much that is out there. Also in terms of censoring information at least to keep them sane and safe. What are we doing as a society? What are we doing as adults to help protect our children? And so from my perspective, and just from my personal point of view, is that I think we really need to do a lot besides just ensuring that these kids are studying and learning. I feel like not just for the sake of not just for the parents' bid, but also just for us as a community, as a society, as individuals. There's so much that we need to do to ensure that we help protect the mental well-being of these students, because these are children from toddlers going to primary, going to secondary schools. All of them are at home for the next couple of months. So I think it's really responsibility for not just the parents alone, but even for us as a community to at least help protect the mental well-being of these children. But again, also this is the conversation that Regina will be having in the next hour, to try and see and to try and better understand probably what we can do and what we need to do, and to do it best to help protect their mental well-being. So Regina, for me, I mean, this is one of the conversations that really just be keen to watch and to see what exactly it is that we're planning to do for these children when it comes to their mental wellness and their mental well-being.
Thank you very much, and we encourage you to give your feedback. I can see we also got feedback in regard to that particular story on digital lenders, and we have Jeff Odwar on Twitter saying, KBC Channel 1, Ray Manyara, digital lenders are taking advantage of Kenyans. I support CBK on barring them. Their penalties are out of this world. Just robbers. Hashtag Good Morning Kenya. Those are views of Jeff Odwar on Twitter saying that he supports, the move that CBK had made in regard to that particular issue. So do keep in touch. We're going to be talking about mental wellness in not too long, but before then we take a short break. When we return, we continue with the rest of the broadcast.
Next on.
Ngoja niulize jamaa, nani hapa hivi amepimwa hivi majuzi?
Para kwa Mwangi, si ni 10 bob.
Sijasema kupimwa weight. Saa hizi kupimwa HIV ni haraka na ni bure.
You are the reason I live.
Gospel singer Johnny Apanke's songs have lifted spirits and healed wounded hearts. This famous song was birthed during a dark and desperate time in Johnny's life. Growing up, Johnny had a passion for music.
Uko na HIV si eti ni mwisho. Wewe uko nayo? Mimi nilishapima.
Afya bora, maisha bora. Jipime, jiinue.
The coronavirus pandemic forced several countries that were scheduled to hold their elections to go back to the drawing board, pondering on whether to hold or to postpone. Africa's second populous nation, Ethiopia, postponed its parliamentary election that was scheduled for August this year to 2021, citing the coronavirus outbreak. However, for others, it's business as usual. Togo became the first country in Africa to hold elections just days after the first COVID-19 case was confirmed in Egypt. In March, Guinea, Mali and Cameroon held its parliamentary elections, followed by Benin, which held its local elections on 17th of May, but employed cautionary measures such as cancelling campaigns and public gatherings of more than 50 people.
What happens when you introduce rice farming to a society that has been fishing for the better part of their lives? The story at the Lower Kuja irrigation scheme is finally changing.
Tunakuja kutwanga mchele alafu wanatupako mchele na pesa kidogo ya kujisaidia.
As the once upon a time fishermen of Nyatike find their way into the history books of rice producers in the country.
Na huko baharini tulikuwa tunaweza enda na samaki ukose samaki kabisa na ukuje bila hata shilingi moja.
Watch it on Thursday at 8:30 p.m. only on KBC Channel 1.
The Atlas Lions of Morocco came to Maula Rambe Stars at Kasarani.
That one. It's them.
But were still tamed by the Fabish boys in the 2002 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier.
Certainly this match is John Mayore playing that one's not into the area. It's in the net. Harambee Stars takes the lead in the 4th minute of the game.
We reminisce this match this Saturday at 5 p.m. on KBC Channel 1 in our determination to showcase our soccer finest. On the next episode of
Shika.
Masudi, mimi mfuko wangu hautoshi hela ndogo kama hizi. Yaani ukiniangalia hivi nafaa kubeba hela ndogo kama hizi. Keep change. Bila bro, unasikia?
Hakuna aliyena kichaa wala sijui uko juu gani hapa. Hakuna. Mimi ndo niko chini ya kitanda.
Si ndio? Sasa una yupi pia?
Basi wajui mimi.
Ulinikokoa wewe na Viki kwanza kakuona juu pale juu. Uliniona? Karibu kusalimia kwambie njomba panda juu.
Ungeniambia.
Tujali kazi zenu
Minutes past 8 a.m. Time for our fast traffic click-up segment this Thursday morning. Our focus being on Mombasa and Nairobi, and we start with Mombasa County. Just as you head over to Kibarani, that is Kibarani flyover, coming all the way from this roundabout, that is Makupa, going all the way on that specific area, going to the city of Mombasa. Traffic around the entire roundabout. So it's just the same, like how we normally see when it comes to Nairobi, where around roundabouts, especially major roundabouts, normally just spotting heavy traffic build up, and especially in the early morning hour, either traffic beginning to slightly build up or even at some point at a standstill. Now, I'll keep mentioning to you all the time that roundabouts connect to a number of roads. It could be major roads, it could be minor or even slip roads, and it is no different from this specific one. This is in the city of Mombasa, as it goes all the way to Magongo Road as you head all the way to Makupa. And just after the roundabout, slightly after the roundabout, traffic is at a standstill, and you can see the difference in color this morning. In fact, after the roundabout, there's a red color, just an indicator that traffic is moving at a pretty slow pace, and slightly past there, it's the maroon color, just showing us the traffic is now at a standstill on that specific area. That is along Makupa as you head over to Kibarani, and slightly after that specific area, the orange color, an indicator that traffic has started to slightly build up, but again, it's moving at a pretty fast pace. But also in another area where I saw traffic also at a standstill, this is next to the Kibarani flyover, and this is on that lane that is coming next to that roundabout that I've just shown you, which is the Makupa roundabout. Traffic at a standstill along this flyover. Now, it is again obvious in areas that are either bus terminals or even flyovers, where they are areas where large-scale businesses are also located. This is how we normally expect to see the roads looking like, especially in this early morning hour, and it is no different around this flyover, just showing us the traffic on this along this specific area. It's not moving at all. In fact, it's just at a standstill. But again, also, I keep telling you that in areas where it's also around flyovers, there's also quite a number of a number of activities, because pedestrians moving from one side of the road to the other, and also the number of especially small scale business activities or traders that we normally witness on major flyovers or even just on flyovers. So again, just underneath that flyover on that specific road, traffic at a standstill there. This is still in Mombasa County, trying to look at how traffic is doing this early morning in that specific county, if it is any different from what normally spot in Nairobi. But it looks like there's barely any difference, because in this early morning hour on major areas or even on specific areas, that is how the road is looking like in terms of traffic. But also again, coming to the same roundabout, this is around also that Makupa roundabout, which branches off to Tomboya Road. That is again also Mombasa Road on the other side, branches off to Lumumba Road. Again, traffic really building up, but it's a bit different from the other roundabout, because on this specific one, traffic has just begun to slightly build up, and this is what you're seeing in regards to the difference in color, because in some parts at least there's a bit of a green color, which is an indicator that it's moving at a pretty fast pace. There's barely any heavy traffic gridlock there, but on some parts of the roundabout, just showing us the traffic has begun to slightly build up. But in as much as yes, that is happening, but it is also manageable, and that is what is being shown by that orange color. So that's that this morning in terms of traffic in Mombasa County. At least we are seeing that there's barely any difference when you look especially around major roundabouts. It's just almost like what we normally spot when you look at what is happening, especially in the Nairobi city, when you look at what is happening around roundabouts. But that hasn't changed in terms of traffic, because again, remember, anytime we look at Nairobi city, traffic changes every single minute. In 1 minute, you'll be seeing a bit of orange. In another minute, you'll be seeing a bit of maroon, an indicator that traffic is at a standstill, not moving at all. But that is not happening in Mombasa city or Mombasa county, because this situation just looks to be the same since when we began looking at how this specific road in Mombasa county was doing. So it's just more of the orange and more of the green, indicating that traffic is beginning to slightly build up, and in some major areas, in fact, moving at a pretty fast pace. So now let's come to Nairobi and see how Nairobi city is doing in terms of traffic. And I just want our focus this morning to be on Uhuru Highway, one of those busy highways, because it really connects to a number of roads, and the number of roundabouts along this highway are also just quite, quite many compared to any other highways, because there's University Way roundabout, there's Kenyatta Avenue, there's Haile Selassie, as well as Nyayo Stadium roundabout. So these are the roundabouts along this highway. And just beginning from University Way roundabouts, looks like what you were spotting when you're looking at what was happening in Mombasa County in terms of traffic. Again, just around roundabouts, no different. Looking at this specific one, coming all the way from Wayaki Way, branching off, going all the way to Uhuru Highway, and also branching on the other side of University Way as you head over to the city center. So this is again one of those busy roundabouts, as this is actually where Uhuru Highway begins, and Uhuru Highway goes all the way to Nyayo Stadium roundabout as it branches off to other major roads, and also connecting off to a number of roundabouts along this highway. Now, looking at this specific one, maybe we could just stay on this one for a couple of minutes, trying to look at how this roundabout is doing in terms of traffic. So in as much as we are seeing the color just painted all through, that is the red and the orange, traffic beginning to slightly build up, but again, it's at least quite manageable, because that is what that color indicates there. That is the orange color. But as I mentioned to you also, this is one of those busy roundabouts, seeing that it comes all the way from Wayaki Way and goes all the way to Uhuru Highway, branches off also to State House Road, coming from University Way, that is from the city center before you get to the roundabout. So clearly making it one of those busy roundabouts. But unlike what you normally spot or see in other major roundabouts, even those that are along this highway, where we normally spot or even see small scale business traders just trying to do their businesses either on the side of the road, just on the side of the road past the roundabout, it is not the case around University Way roundabout. And also the number of businesses around this specific roundabout are not that quite many, but along the highway there are quite a number of large scale business centers, but around the roundabout they're not that quite many. But in terms of vehicles, well, clearly serves quite a number of vehicles, because you can imagine coming all the way from the city center, that is from CBD, as you head over to Uhuru Highway, and even using this roundabout heading over to Wayaki Way, using the same roundabout heading over to State House Road. So that obviously makes it one of those busy roads. Now look at this. This has changed in terms of the colors, and that is what shows us that traffic has changed. It's unlike what you were spotting in Mombasa City, where the color had just stayed at one color since when you're beginning to look at how the road was doing in terms of traffic. On this specific one, this is around University Way roundabout. This color was orange when you're beginning to see how the road was doing in terms of traffic, indicating that traffic was moving at a pretty fast pace, in as much as it had begun to slightly build up. But that has quite changed, because now what you're seeing right now is the red color, just showing us that traffic is now moving at a pretty slow pace. This is just after you branch off from the University Way roundabout, heading over to State House Road, and also on the other side near Railway Road. But again, when you look at this road, this is State House Road. It is unlike what you are seeing in Uhuru Highway, or even what you are seeing around the roundabout, because clearly it is green all through. I keep telling you that this is one of those roads where it does not cater for public vehicles. Only private vehicles as well as motorcycles. So that is another reason as to why there's barely any heavy traffic gridlock along this road, unlike what we normally spot in other major roads in terms of traffic buildup, especially in the early morning hours. So State House Road just caters for private vehicles, caters for pedestrians as well as motorcycles. There's no any public service vehicles. So that could be the reason as to why there's no traffic in this early morning hour, and that could be the the reason as to why we barely spot any heavy traffic buildup. So that what this means is, if you're coming from Wayaki Way, that means if you're coming from estates such as Westlands or even Kikuyu, Kino, if you're coming from University Way, coming from the city center, and you're going to areas such as Valley Road, and you do not want to do the traffic along Uhuru Highway, because I can clearly tell you for now, the traffic on that specific highway is quite unbearable in this early morning hour. This is one of those roads that you can use as an alternative route, and that is the State House Road. So that's that in terms of traffic this morning. Our focus being on what is happening in Mombasa County as well as in the Nairobi City in Uhuru Highway.
Much for that update on what is happening on our major roads, and we are already getting feedback from one of our viewers who's based in Mombasa, saying thank you very much, Doreen, for bringing us the traffic update from Mombasa. That is W_M on Twitter, saying that he's happy that we have also focused on Mombasa City. Now over to our interactive segment. Being Thursday, we talk about issues close to our hearts, and this morning we're going to be focusing on mental wellness. Yes, this comes at a time when that particular issue has been focused on our major dailies, and actually the header on some of the front page reads, "Declare mental illness a public health crisis, a president urged." If I can take you through what that particular article says, is that when the Presidential Task Force on Mental Health in Kenya toured Nakuru County, its members met an 80-year-old patient who had been abandoned by family at Gilgil Hospital for 60 years. Now, during their visit to Mathare Hospital on February the 14th, they found extremely deplorable conditions. Quoted there is one of the team members saying that it is difficult to believe that people can work cheerfully in a dedicated manner in a dilapidated, dehumanizing environment that we found. Now, the team was constituted in November 21st and inaugurated on December 11th by the then health CS, that is Cicely Kariuki. President Kenyatta had directed the ministry to establish a task force to look into the status of mental health in the country. It is also co-chaired by Dr. Frank Njenga. Now, it held public participation in forums across the country, and now some of the reports that this team has handed over to the health CS Mutahi Kagwe on Tuesday. The task force recommended that the president declares mental illness a national public health emergency. Some of the statistics in that particular report is that 1 in every 10 Kenyans has one form of mental disorder. This morning we're tackling mental wellness in our hashtag KBC Kids Talk show. We want to hear from parents as well as professionals as well as the kids themselves as to what areas are, what are their stress triggers, because we want to believe anxiety, stress is one form or another of mental disorder. We're going to differentiate between, mental health and mental wellness, as also focus on issues of self-care. Joining me this morning is Dr. Margaret Olande, who is a psychologist, and she's going to be keeping us, company during this particular broadcast to shed light on the issue of mental health. Good morning, Dr. Ari, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you on board.
Yes, great to have you too.
Yes. Now, we have this particular header this morning, declare mental illness a public health crisis. From where you sit, is this the right move? Is this the right time to actually have mental illness, declared a public health crisis?
Yes, this is the right route, and it should have been taken even long time ago, given the circumstances we found ourselves, where schools are closed and people are losing jobs, people are locked down. They are in circumstances they were not used to, and so anxiety has settled. The thought of what is coming tomorrow. I mean, will I go back to school, especially among the young people? So anxiety has settled, and to be anxious, that is not the best place to be. And if it's not sorted early enough, anxiety has its very bad repercussions. It is a mental disorder which needs to be addressed very soon. And it is not just among the young people, it's about the older people. The anxiety about, my parents, will my parents still be there for me? Maybe a young person was going to school and is wondering, I was just being sponsored maybe by my uncle. Now my uncle has lost his job, or my parents have lost jobs. And so that pattern where we have found ourselves has caused a lot of anxiety that brings about the discussion on mental illness. So as we go on, we'll try to look at specifically what is it that WHO describes as mental illness.
Now, Dr. would want to first start by expounding exactly what mental illness is, because on ground, especially in the public forum, whenever you talk about mental illness, people think that it's the clinical form that I need to be in Mathare Hospital or not. How about we unpack what mental illness or other disorders we are looking at this point? Maybe you can help us expound on that.
Maybe we'll just look at the scholarly description or definition or all that mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities. Your abilities, you cannot cope. Your ability to cope has been impaired, and you become so unsettled. You may be, you can feel that you are stressed. You may not even know what is causing that stress. Why am I not settled? So you are just overwhelmed by what is happening around you. And so that is also part of mental health. But when we talk about mental health, there are many areas that are considered. The deeper we go into the state of health is what can be described as other areas that may be considered to take you to Mathare. But not all mental health is a cause to go to Mathare, because at a trauma you can be traumatized. You could have gone through something that has traumatized you, and that causes you to unsettled, not to think properly. You may not even be able to even want to go to the bathroom, to even take a bath. You are just someone, people look at you and you are not, to you think you are working very well, that you are in control of what you are doing, but you are not in control of what you are doing. At your place of work, you may not be productive. You don't do things on time. So it's a couple of both psychological and psychiatric assessment that will make you, will help the psychiatrist or the psychologist to decide that now where you are today, this is now a case that needs to be addressed either by a psychologist or a psychiatrist, or needs an hospital. But one has to go through a medical assessment to determine exactly where they are.
Thank you very much, Dr. Margaret Olande, who is a psychologist. She's going to be helping us just, circumvent, or rather just go through this conversation, giving her her expert opinion in regard to mental wellness. We also have some of our participants this morning, and we have them online. And we have Mungai online. Mungai, Nkatha, sorry. Nkatha, good morning. How are you? Glad to have you on board once again.
Yes, good morning to you, Ray.
Great. Just remind us where you're live from.
I'm live from Nakuru County.
That is Nakuru County. Glad to have you on board. Now, we've heard there from Madam Daktari there, Dr. Margaret Olande, who's a psychologist, saying that the issues, the pressures, the current pressures that people are dealing with, that include the issue of lack of jobs, constant and negative, politics, fear of violence, and divisive elections. Just some of the reports that you've had in the report that was handed over to the president, and also, the health CS there, Kagwe, that says 1 in every 10 Kenyans is, has a form of mental disorder. From where you sit in Katha, why do you think this is so?
There's so many reasons as to why someone might be might be going through the mental challenge. And the fact, one being the economic crunch that everybody's feeling, and maybe the stress levels have also increased. And considering also we have our children in the houses, also there's also the aspect of what juggling between the office, juggling between finding a job, juggling between finding the stability for these children and whether you're raising them very well. And there's also the societal expectations from everybody, especially for men.
For men, the pressures. But now then, we are here. We found ourselves in this situation. And what has come out, even from that particular report in the survey that has been conducted, and it shows that a majority of low-income earners from Nairobi, with children staying at home, say feeding them is one of their greatest challenge. From where you sit in Katha, do you think, just being able to take care, to fend for your children, especially within the family setup, is one of the cause of anxiety and stress among the parents?
Yes, I believe it's actually one of the reasons why parents are quite struggling right now. Because I mean, for instance, if you're used to children being in schools, they most of the time will either get either breakfast or dinner at home, and the only thing they get from school maybe it's their lunch. So it kind of breaks, the parents get relieved that their child is going to get one meal in school. While the other thing is that when they're in school, they also get that attention from teachers, and also the teachers are also able to guide them. But now when they're at home and they're stuck there, they have to all the time as parents we have to consider, will my child be safe in this house? Do I leave them in the house, or do I find someone to stay with them? Or what exactly do I do to ensure that my child is safe in this house? And either way, they can access their basic needs, because as it is right now, if you violate a child's rights in any way, whether it's maybe you can't afford their meals, or either you can't clothe them properly, or either you neglect them in one aspect or the other, then there are chances of you getting jailed, or either also being taken to court. And as a parent, you're kind of scared that you don't want to get to that point where you're taken to court and you have to drag yourself down there through the judicial system.
Now, Katha, I'd want to know, have you ever been in a situation where you had an overwhelming sense of incapacity that caused you stress and anxiety that you'd be willing to share with us in this forum, and how you got over it?
Personally, I am a survivor actually of emotional and long term, because I had PTSD, and it was kind of prolonged for quite some time, because my story starts when I was about 3 years, and by the time I was 17 years, my dad was killed. And it was very unfortunate that I was there to watch the whole ordeal. And it kind of traumatized me from 2017. Let me say until today, I'm still recovering from the whole issue, because you out of the post-traumatic stress disorder that you go through, either through especially my experience of watching my dad get killed. Actually, he was cut by his brother using a machete. So it wasn't funny that people kind of didn't understand what I was going through, and people could actually make a lot of jokes about it. But for me, I knew I couldn't be I couldn't trust people. I couldn't even stay, I couldn't hold on to my job for quite some long. So I moved from one company to the other in the aim of trying to find my stability. And at some point, I had to even quit, because most of my job, especially the last one, I didn't leave the job. You know, the way you resign and you're saying, now I've had enough of this. I remember at some point I had to throw the office keys to my boss, because she called me Pakahi, and I kind of blew things out of proportion, and I left. So when I left, I decided now there's nothing major to do. So I went back into selling mtumba. I stayed for a while there, 6 months. And then I got another job. I came to Nakuru. And on getting to Nakuru now, I decided now, I think I've been on the run for so long, and I cannot, it's about time I faced my situation and did something about it. Because, you know, you can't keep on, like you get a job today, and tomorrow you leave the job without even a specific reason. You're not even giving any reason why you're not feeling like going to work, where you're not feeling like you want to talk to people. The only interaction that you want to have is to people through social media. For me, that didn't kind of look like life, and that's how I founded the organization I work with currently, Frolics of Hope Africa, that we help children, especially who've gone through traumatic experiences in life, to cope with life, and probably also have access to mental health issues.
That was quite, quite a summary there, Nkatha. I'm glad that you can share, or rather you've had, you've trusted us to share that information with us. And I'm glad that you're a survivor and you look back and you see that, you stopped running at some point. You start running at some point. But because we have a psychologist online, that is Dr. Margaret Olande, let's hear what she has to say to just help you, just some, how survival tactics. You've had Nkatha's story there that she witnessed the brutal murder of her dad, and she was also already going through, trauma at the age of 3. That was when she lost her father at the age of 17. This is something that has changed, her aspect in terms of life. From where you sit, Dr. Margaret Olande, as a psychologist, then how can we help her cope with this going into the future?
Thank you, Nkatha, for sharing, because a problem shared is solved. And many people do not believe that they should share, but you've grown to a point that you can now share and you can talk freely about it. That means that you are on your way to, almost 70 to 80% recovery. And I believe you are coping well. And I just want to thank you, because what you've done is just, sharing to those who are listening. There are so many people, because someone somewhere will tell about this story that I heard of, when I was listening to KBC. This lady shared that she has recovered from, post-traumatic experiences, and now she's well, she's coping well. So that is a coping skill. So thank you so much. Trauma is very, very deep. And the fact that you are traumatized at a young age, when you did not even know that what trauma is all about. It's not like when one is grown, then probably your friends or your parents will look at you and, maybe seek medical attention. You are looking at your father, as he was murdered. These are very bizarre, incidents that a small child should not go through. And the fact that you have lived out of it and you are sharing today, I am so very grateful. And so talk about trauma. Trauma is a state of not being able to really cope. You may not even know, you are scared. Even when you hear some noise, like when you saw your father being murdered, maybe just hearing people making, any type of noise, that noise will take you back to the scene. Just hearing people talking about, oh, there were people fighting here, because you said they had machete. So even seeing someone with a machete takes you back to the scene. So you keep on going back to that scene, you keep on looking behind you. You reach a point whereby you do not even trust anyone. You may not even trust the very people who may help you. Well, be they teachers, especially if the assailants were male, then you reach a point where you do not even trust any male, because to you, any male is a murderer. And maybe later in the program, you will tell us whether you are married, whether you are able to date, because I don't know how that was like for you because of the experiences you went through. So trauma, when discovered and when it is known, should be addressed. At least a psychologist should see you And then now, if your parents knew, you should have gone to a child psychologist to be able to even deal with what you are going through then. And then as you grew up, then probably you could go to an older, psychologist or a counselor to help you to cope. Because without which, the anxiety that you lived with would have disoriented you. Even I don't know how you are able to perform in school, because it destabilizes you in so many areas of your life, and it can impact very, very negatively, because you may have worries that are so persistent. You may end up with very intense heartbeat. You may not sometimes even be able to stand before people and talk, because you are very, very anxious, because you don't trust the people who are around you. And this interferes with your productivity, interferes with your stability, interferes with your concentration. So anyone, when it is well known that you have gone through a trauma, should seek psychological attention, and then your psychologist or your counselor will tell you that you need maybe a psychiatrist assessment. And that's why we also say that even in schools, we should have counselors. And even right now, what people are going through, that anxiety is the order of the day. Schools should develop programs, even as young people are at home. When we have even online teaching or lessons, those lessons should be accompanied by some form of counseling, so that people are counseled, because to be anxious, permanently, it is not a good place to be. But trauma is a state of mental disorder, and it is not a well place to be. So you will please share with us.
Yes.
I don't know.
Now let's get to hear what Nkata has to say, from that information that you've given us, Dr. Margaret Olande. Thank you very much for that feedback. Now, Nkata, if we have you back online, I'd want to hear what is your take in regard to what Dr. Ari there has shared, and how you're faring.
Especially if she can share with us how our coping skills.
Your coping skills there, that is what Dr. Margaret Olande wants to hear. I mean, how have you developed coping skills with your trauma? Maybe you can share with us, Nkata. What's your take on what Dr. Ari has said?
Alcohol, drugs, and all that, but just share with us how you coped.
Nkata, to you. Nkata,
my coping skills was actually something, I don't know if it kind of, because I became very active. I wasn't at some point, of course, I was a bit secluded for like a month or two, but after that, now I realized I kind of was sinking into depression, and I had to do something about it, although I couldn't put the term like depression to what I was going through by then. So I just like Dr. is mentioning, at some point I couldn't, the fact that I was from Darakanithi, and I was actually in school. So I hear you speaking Kimeru, and I would totally napiga corner to the other end, like I must run away from all this. And the fact that I could also not have friends so close by. I still don't, by the way. Even to date, it's very hard for me to bring relatives and friends into my house. And I find it more like, we can meet outside there and chat right now. But previously, I couldn't do that. And I decided now to get more involved in other things, especially when it comes to marketing and sales. I decided now, instead of sitting behind a computer like I was used to, it became very boring for me. And every other time I would find myself thinking about the entire ordeal. So I decided at that point now I should move to marketing. But I couldn't, even if I did marketing, I couldn't do marketing to like a specific kind of group. Dr. asked if I have been married and if I've dated. Honestly, I'm 31, but I haven't. because I find it very difficult, like because the moment you know, of course, people say in relationship there's one or two lies that cover up, and when you do that for me, you cover up a lie and another lie. So whenever you do that for me, it kind of pisses me off. In fact, it blows me off the grid completely. So I don't like encourage those relationships.
Okay, thank you very much, Nkatha, for sharing your story there and letting us just
Find a
in
way of-
on your struggles there. We will be getting back to just hear what Dr. Ari has to say about what you've said. But before then, how about we invite someone else into this Mora? Let's talk to Mora and hear what she has to say in regard to this matter. Mora, good morning.
Good morning, thank you.
Great to have you on board. Tell us where you're live from.
I'm live from Nairobi County.
Asante sana, Nairobi County getting represented there. Now, you've heard what Dr. Ari has said there, as well as our first guest there, Nkatha, just sharing her issues in regard to, you know, a situation she found herself overwhelmed, you know, and she's still trying to deal with it. What is your take on the issue of mental health? Have you had an experience with such, and how have you coped?
Yeah, I had actually two. One when I was in high school. I was around Form 3 and Form 4. So I had my fellow students visit my home. I didn't come from such a wealthy background. So on inviting friends to just come and say hi to me at my place, people I trusted at that time, on going back to school, they made fun of me because they didn't find our home as pleasing as it ought to be according to them during those times. So for the whole term, I was depressed, but my deputy madam helped me to walk through it. So it was frustrating to me as a student. I want to study, but again, people are making a mockery of you. You may be walking along the pathways of the school, and every student knows like someone went to somebody's place and it wasn't such good, and yet they are studying in this kind of school. So it wasn't such a good experience for me. I felt sad for the whole term. We went home feeling still sad, but now when we came back, I had actually walked out of it because I felt like even if this has happened, there is something maybe I could do in the future to have a change. And the second experience...
Mora, right now we're dealing, and I'd want you to maybe expound more, you know, the issue when you fell into depression, you said that your house mother helped you get through it. Now we are having children who are also dealing with peer pressure, and I tend to think that also, you know, one way or another, you know, just affects your self-esteem. Tell us, how did you cope? Has this issue sense of, you know, you cannot trust the friends you're with, or, you know, to just be open, has it affected your relations as a grown-up at this point?
At this point, I have dealt with it, but on winding high school, joining to campus, I was very sensitive to friendship, and I could actually fear to invite people to my place because I felt like now they are maybe richer than I am, or they are a little bit better than me. But
now that is Mora who's sharing her story. Yeah, you're back online.
Yes, who are older than me. So on sharing with them, they encouraged me to do
Okay, we're having a bit of a problem there.
And now I did a swipe of friendship. You will find me with older. Sorry?
Your net is a bit shaky, but now you're stable. So we were just talking about if you know your experiences, you know, growing up, especially in high school. We wanted to establish if they have affected your relations now as a grown-up, and what you have done to cope, you know, with your anxiety around, you know, just inviting people in your personal space.
What I've done actually at this point of my life, I have swapped my friendship. I walk around with people who are older, especially when it comes to ladies. I have ladies as friends who are older than me, maybe the age of my mother, and a little bit slightly older than me, because now I feel I'm a little bit comfortable at their space. Because I feel like they won't judge me at my age, because now they don't expect me to be where they are. as I am much younger than them. And when it comes to the age, my age mates, it's a little bit difficult for me to interact with such. But whenever I do, I am very cautious of it. And I think first if I really want to have good friendship with these people. But it barely works out for me because I have my own insecurities already.
Okay. Mora there. Daktari, we're still having you online. You've heard what Mora has had to say, that her issues started at the age of 14 when she trusted her friends to come over to a place, but they ended up mocking her. As coping mechanism now, her friends are of an older demographic, age of her mom. She feels more secure within such spaces. What do you have to say about that? Daktari Margaret Olandi, who's a psychologist. What do you have to say about Mora's coping mechanism?
Mora, thank you for sharing. It's always therapeutic when you share. But I must say that low self-esteem is mainly among the young people, but it's also among older people. But it depends on how you look at life. For Mora, she thought that being having parents who are not as wealthy as the parents of her friends made her, look down upon herself. And once you look down upon yourself, regardless of, even if you are friends, maybe they didn't even mind, they are your friends, maybe they did not mind. But because mentally, you have put it in your mind that these people, the way they talk, the English they talk, the schools they go to, their clothes, so that made you, think, belittle yourself, so to speak, in a sense. And so you decide that your coping skill in this matter is to get along with older people, and you rightly put it that they will not judge you. It's a state of insecurity. You felt so insecure amongst your peers that you are hiding. You are hiding behind the curtains, and because you are not able to cope. Probably also a bit of anxiety. You are also anxious. How will my tomorrow be when I meet them? How will I even cope? Will they keep on judging me that I'm from a poor family? But one needs to probably, because maybe you are stressed. I won't call it depression. I don't think it is not a depressed state, but you suffered just a low self-esteem. You got so stressed in a manner that you are looking behind your shoulders. Why am I not like the others? And this would take you to even blaming your parents. How come they are not as wealthy as these people? Maybe they are not even working hard as the parents of the others. So if you knew what to do, probably you needed a bit of counseling. You needed affirmation. The counselor would have affirmed you and told you, you are just right the way you are. You are just okay the way you are. You are going to school, and after going to school, you will change this state that you do not like. But what happens is that maybe sharing is also a problem because of your state of insecurity. You don't trust anyone. When I share with them, what will they take me to be? They will still look down upon me because of the schools I go to, the shoes I wear, the kind of food probably you prepared for them. Maybe your reason of being friends with older people, because you knew that there's no time that you will invite older people to your home. So you are safer that way, because this for you is a very good corner. It's a comfortable corner, but it wasn't a good corner for you, because what were you going to discuss with these older people? They have experiences that you do not have. So the best way to handle this is to seek counseling, so that you can be affirmed, you can be talked to, you can be told that you are okay the way you are, and believe in yourself.
Okay.
It's not a very deep state of mental illness, but when left and unattended to, can cause, even your performance in school to deteriorate.
Very well said. That is our resident doctor for today to take us through, this discussion of mental wellness, at a time when we are grappling with that issue, whether it should be declared a public health crisis. Dr. Margaret Olandi, the psychologist, advice to Mora is that you need to share more, and you need to go for counseling for affirmation. Thank you for sharing your story, Mora, and I hope this platform has helped you just see what you need to do going forward in future. We have one of our participants. Also, we have Timothy Ekesa on the line. Good morning, Timothy. How are you?
Good morning to you, Regina.
Great to have you on board. What do you have to say about the current discussion that we're holding?
Very interesting discussions, but I think one thing that comes out very clearly that both Nkatha and Dolin Mora, I can see there are two Moras, Purity and Dolin, what they're discussing about the trauma, the stress, the depression, it happened when they were children. And to me, it really sends a very big message to all of us that we need to look at our children. Most of these issues, Ngata was 3 years, Dolin was 14 years. So it seems children are going a lot of trauma, actually going through a lot of trauma. And I agree with the president that we need to declare this to be a national disaster in this country.
Now, Timothy Ekesa, you're one of our participants who we expect to be here in studio. By any chance, why did you dodge not coming to the studio this morning?
I was not coming. You had Dr. Margaret with you there. I just wanted to follow the metro discussion and actually relate it to what is happening right now with this idea of schools closing for a whole year. So I really wanted to see how it will link up into it. What kind of trauma we're going to get from children? What kind of depression are we going to expect come that magical January 2021?
Have you encountered any form of this, just something that had gotten you very overwhelmed, rather, that gave you a lot of anxiety or stress in your childhood, or even now as an adult, Timothy? Have you undergone?
Yes. I think as a child, I also went through a lot of stress. I also went through a lot of trauma, especially when it comes to issues of when you are in a school. I used to be sickly when I was in school. And when you talk to your parent and they can't see why they should change you to another school, or when you have this migraine that doesn't go away, it causes a lot of stress because you don't concentrate, and at times you fail who to talk to. And as a child, when we grew up, we never used to be very free with our parents like the children of nowadays, the Nkata type and Dolin who can talk to their parents. For us, it was so difficult. And during our growing up again, we didn't have that chance of having counselors in schools. It's a new concept that has come in. All you could have were teachers who are teaching the various subjects, and the whole department of counseling was not there. So we struggled through. You could talk to your peers. I could talk to a few older people we have, but they don't give you answers. The answer, they'll tell you that we went through it, also just go through it.
Yeah, there's always that response when you share while you're growing up that wewe jikaze, we were there, you will get over it. Now, we still have some waiting to join in this discussion. Now, our next guest, thank you, team, for your time. Thank you for your contribution there, highlighting the need to have just counseling mechanisms, especially in schools, and people with answers, well trained to just handle issues that children are going through, not the issue of stresses. Now, the report that we got, rather, that has been handed to the president, says that 1 out of every 10 Kenyans has one form of mental disorder. And picking from what Dr. Margaret Olande, who is our guest this morning, a psychologist, said, the issue of anxiety and stresses are some of the issues, some of the triggers in regard to just, mental wellness. It may not be something so big, but if left unattended and not spoken about, then it can deteriorate to a bigger and larger problem. Now, still coming up, we want, let me just share some of the feedback that we have received on our Twitter handle. Let me start from, is one gentleman who, there it is. I'm Mwenda, Ian Mwenda on Twitter says, everything happens in its season. We shall overcome COVID-19 and it will not last. This comes at a time when this report has been released, there's been an upward trajectory of health issues, rather especially the issues of mental wellness this time when people are going through COVID-19. Then also we have one more. Timothy Okes also came on Twitter and said, do we have a choice? No, we have no control over it. Let's take each day as it comes and help our kids go through this tough time. This is by Mama Ryan from Nakuru. Thank you very much for tweeting. Let's keep this conversation going. What do you think about this issue of mental wellness? And is it about time that we declared mental illness a public health crisis? Now we have Jackie Jerry online. Good morning, Jackie. How are you? Glad to have you on board.
Good morning.
Great to see you. What do you have to say about this particular conversation that we're having? And also tell us where it is that you're live from. Or you're live from Nairobi? Great.
Yes.
Now tell us, what is your take in regard to the issue of mental illness, you know? What is your take? Why do you think we have such many cases? You know, the report says that 1 out of every 10 Kenyans has one form of mental disorder. Why do you think it's on the rise?
Well, mental health is real. It's actually one disturbing thing to most young people, especially the teenagers. Personally, when I was growing up, I had a health issue, some complications, and it was really, really difficult for me. I went through some kind of depression, and nobody could notice that because they thought it is just a normal thing. My health was really not doing well, Kabisa, and I would cry most of the time, and I was so afraid about the following day. Will I make it? Or will I survive? Will I, live long like I wanted? Will I become the journalist that I really wanted? It was really difficult for me as a person, as a young person at that particular time. And so I found myself being alone. I preferred being alone because I was laughed at. People were mocking me and all that. And so growing up, it was really, really difficult until right now. It is still difficult because I'm still struggling with that. I'm still struggling with the illness. And that is not all because, we keep on upgrading. When I was young, I was dealing with people and children because they were laughing at me. And now I have to deal with, what about my tomorrow? Will I be able to do 1, 2, 3? Will I be able to achieve my goals with this kind of an illness? And so it has been a bit traumatizing. And also interacting with young people, especially the young girls. I've come to learn that actually mental illness is real because it affects young girls in terms of, especially sexual abuse. Most young girls go through sexual abuse, and it is usually really difficult on their case. Another thing that I realized about mental illness on young people is stress and depression. When you feel you're not yourself, when you feel like you're not good enough to fit somewhere, when you feel like you're not strong enough to do a lot of things, and the anxiety of tomorrow. So mental illness is real, and I'm so encouraged by the stories being shared today. And I feel like if we can have somebody to address this issue, then we will be in a good position.
Now, Jackie, allow me to take you back in your upbringing. I have a question about, your support structure. While, people from outside were taking time to, jeer at you and mock you about something they really did not know about exactly what is happening with you, how was your support structure? And, how your family, was it supportive?
Well, for my mom was really supportive, but not in terms of mental illness. She was supportive in my health issue, but the rest of the issues, I think I was not sharing too much about them, and even the teachers, I could not share because I felt shy and I felt like they'll end up laughing at me. So it is something that I had to deal with it by myself.
Now, you're a journalist, and they say we're in the same line of work right now. Do you think what you went through then in regard to just issues of self-esteem issues and such, has it in one way or another affected the way your interpersonal relationship with other people?
Very much. Especially I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm not good enough. sometimes I'm given a task and I'm like, oh my goodness, am I going to manage this? And I'm like, no, I can't. I had confidence issues. I couldn't face somebody, and I'm like, my name is Jackie Jerry. I am a journalist. I'm from this organization. I want to know about. It was really, really difficult because I could see like they would laugh at me at the end of the day. So it is difficult for me as a journalist.
Now, how about we rope in Dr. Margaret Olande, who is a psychologist and helping us just, help us, just understand and navigate this issue. Dr. You've heard what Jackie Jerry has said, the issue of self-esteem. She's still struggling with a few issues, from scars from her past. What advice would you give her at this point so that she can, continue being a brilliant journalist as she is? Dr.
There are so many types of mental illness. One has to know where they are, which type of mental illness are you suffering from? Because like what she has just shared was a bit of low self-esteem combined with anxiety and not wanting to meet people, not wanting to be where people are. But for coping skills, you need to talk to someone. You need to share with someone who you are confident that at least they will not share your state in a very negative way with others. If you trust your parents, you can talk to your parents. If you trust your teachers, you can talk to your teachers. But mental illness will tell you that you are okay. You are okay where you are. You don't need to talk to people. You feel sad and you see that state is, you are very okay in that sad state. You feel anxious and you are very okay in that, feeling very anxious. But the best things to do is, like I said before, is to seek, help. Seek help from a counselor, seek help from, if you think your parents can help you, if you don't trust them because you think they will judge you, then don't share with them, but share with someone who can help you. But the best thing to do is to really, because when you share or when you go to see a professional, then they will tell you the type of mental illness you are. Probably you are thinking yours is so deep and you can't cope with it and it cannot be treated. And it is just something that when you go through maybe a few sessions of counseling, maybe even just a talk with a psychiatrist, if that is the level that your primary health care has told you to go to, then you will be helped. But what is important is to really know where you are. Is it a clinical depression? Is it anxiety? Is it bipolar? Is it dementia? Are you suffering from schizophrenia? So one has to, you need assessment. You need medical assessment to really know where you are. You can overjudge yourself for what you are not even suffering from. Probably it's just fear of tomorrow,
Thank you very much, Dr. Ari there. That is Dr. Margaret Olande, a psychologist, just helping us navigate this issue of mental wellness and just trying to, speaking to the participants who have raised the issues and just trying to see how we can work going ahead. Now, Jackie and Jerry, you've heard the issue of anxiety. You just need to talk to someone so that you can, establish exactly what you're dealing with so that you can forge ahead. We welcome feedback, and feedback is trickling in. Our Twitter handles at KBC Channel 1 News. Mine is at Ray Manyara. Now, Winnie Minor says mental illness is a silent killer and should be taken more seriously. Identifying the same and getting correct support to overcome it is a need in this country. Do you agree? Do you agree? While we're still waiting for your feedback, let's listen in on Purity Mora, what she has to say in regard to this conversation. Purity Mora, good morning.
Good morning, Regina. How are you?
Great. Great to have you on board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So far, so good in this conversation. What do you think about this issue of mental illness from where on an individual capacity? What's your take?
I think it's a very timely topic. Something most people are going through. Because 1 in 10 people, that's a huge number. You're in a room of 10 people, one of you is likely to have a mental issue. So it's a very timely topic, and I'm glad it's a major concern and an emergency. I just like to say there is a difference. I'm a psychology student and a mental advocate and wellness enthusiast. Yes. And I've been working with different organizations like Amazing Minds Africa and Basic Needs, Basic Rights, Inuka as well, which are platforms that enhance mental awareness. And I think the biggest problem we have is information. There's not enough information. So now that it is an emergency, a health emergency, the way we talk about corona, we should wash our hands, we should wear masks. I think that is something we should also preach with mental wellness. Let us have advertisements about what we can do. Let us say, if, for example, Inuka is a free platform where someone can get help and counseling and free therapy. We have Kenyatta National Hospital, where Professor Mudhoni Mathai is a counselor and a therapist, and these are free. So I'm sure most people did not have this information. Also, you
Now,
don't have to have
Purity, let me just cut you short there. Would want to know where you're live from. I understand you're a student. You didn't share which campus and which branch that is. Then you're very close to the gadget, so kindly just lean back a little bit so that we can get to see you better. Awesome. Much better. Just give us that information, where you're live from, and you're pursuing, psychology, I guess, and tell us which campus and where it is situated.
All right. I am a student at Kenyatta University, psychology student, third year. Yes.
So where are you right now? Are you within the campus premises?
I'm in Nairobi.
You're in Nairobi. Great.
Yes.
Third year student pursuing psychology there. Purity Mora sharing her experience. Now, we've seen the current, the current statistics as it is. We've seen an upward trajectory in increase, in issues of, mental illness. In one way, either right now or in your past, have you had an encounter that, almost made you, lose your sense of being? And how did you cope with that, if at all there was such a situation?
Yes, Regina. As I was growing up, I faced domestic violence at home, and it was hard for me because seeing your parents not in good terms wasn't quite exciting. But I would say it was more of a defense mechanism than a coping mechanism, because I really just tried to push it back and focus on my studies, especially in primary school. I indulge in debate, I indulge in drama and music, and just put all my energy there to kind of forget what is happening at home. Yes.
And a coping escapism, some of sort, as you said, it was an escape.
Yes.
And has this, what you witnessed while you're growing up, has this in one way or another influenced your relations, now as an adult?
I think now that I had put it in the back of my mind, I have nothing to point out. I wouldn't say I have problems with my friends, really. No. But I think I coped well, and I used to talk to my teachers about it. No, not all. I had a counseling teacher, mostly in high school, and I used to express myself through drama and music. I'd read books, and I'd just put my mind there. Yes.
Now, let's hear from our resident doctor today, that is Margaret Olande, who's a psychologist, just to try and put that into perspective. We've seen there's also been a huge increase in number of gender-based violence, especially among students. There was quite, a debacle in a story that drew a lot of headlines where, an ex hacked another, just outside one of these local universities. Daktari, from where you sit, you've had Purity Mora's issues. She put all her energies into music and just, trying to forget and put it at the back of her mind. What advice would you give her? And also just rope in on the issue of gender-based violence, especially among children, and how then this, among students, and how then this is related to the issue of the status of the mind, the mental status.
Thank you, Purity. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for bringing up the issue of GBV, gender-based violence. We are who we are because of the way we were socialized. So mental illness is to some extent associated with socialization. Because for a man, Ekesa shared that he could not talk so much about what he was going through because he's answering to the what we call the masculine mandate that does not allow him to share his weaknesses. So he stood, as a macho. He's a man, so he was not going to share with anyone. And because the society does not expect any weakness from a man like Ekesa. And so for purity, it was both a defense mechanism, but also a coping skill. As a girl growing up in a family where maybe people used to abuse one another and fight, and so her stability was interfered with. She looked probably, I don't know whether she said it was her parents, but whoever was not, living well around her. So there was a disconnect. Is this what I'm going to as a lady? Will I really, even date and get married? And if this is the kind of life I'm going to live, then probably I don't even need to, get married. Maybe those thoughts crossed her mind. So she decided, you know what, I'm going to be very, very, very active. And I appreciate what Purity did, because that being active is one of the coping skills, is one of the defense mechanisms, so that she was just pushing it behind, to deal with it later. She didn't solve it, because when you push a problem, it will repress. You suppress it, and it will come back when a situation like that also comes on again. So you needed to seek help. But when we go to gender-based violence that is rampant today among young people, among older people, it has been caused by the state in which we find ourselves, the socio-economic state. Our economy is going down. People are losing jobs. And so people are not able to cope. You are used to getting, feeding your family. And here you are now, you cannot even feed this family. Men especially suffer most, because men are not used to, staying at home, looking at children making noise, expecting you as the provider to provide, and you cannot provide. And so what do? They become so agitated because, for example, here is maybe your wife or your children. They want, the life that they were used to. Sometimes some people have been, so displaced. You need to go to a smaller house. These children were not even used to going to be in a smaller house. They want to study. So their studies have also been interfered with. You are told about social distancing. How do you social distance when you've moved just to one room, or you've just been into one room? So all this, the fact that there came a panic. When there was lockdown, when a man loses a job or a woman loses a job, there is a panic. And this panic destabilizes you, psychologically, emotionally, and even, physically, because and socially, because now men may even try to hide. They are not used to, staying at home and not providing. They are used to provide. And so how does a man cope in that state? Their coping skill tells them, fight, you go to FF, fight or flee. But because he's a man, his masculinity does not allow him to move away. So what does he do? He turns to his wife, whom he thinks keep on asking him for A, B, C, D in the house, and to provide, and he cannot provide. So COVID-19 has really destabilized us, and especially when we look at young people who are going to school. What disturbs young people most? Will I go back to school? Will my father pay for my school fees? Because he's now at home. He has lost his job. And this one,
Anxiety
yes,
that have come about, with the domino effect of COVID-19.
Yes.
We'll come back to you, Dr. to just try and see now, because we're already in this situation and, a cure of COVID-19 is still at large. We need to get coping mechanisms so that we can all, survive this. Before we get to that part, how about we get to one more of our participants, that is Namadi. Good morning, Namadi. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Great to see you once again. Remind us where you're live from.
I'm live from County 001, Mombasa.
County 01, that is Mombasa. Hali vipi, now we can come to Mombasa, especially from next week. We will be flooding there once everything goes well with the SGR and also the local flights. We will be flooding the beaches one more time. And how is your daughter? We've missed her, Ariana. How is she doing? How is Ariana doing?
She's fine. She's here playing with her brothers.
Okay. I hope they don't go switch off the internet like last time. We just pray that they will. Yes, last time they switched off the Wi-Fi while you were really while you were giving your feedback. I hope this time they won't do it. Now, we have been talking about the issue of mental wellness and just borrowing from a report that has already been published and handed over to the president. And it says that 1 out of every Kenyan is suffering from one form of mental disorder and another. And a report a survey that has been done in peri-urban areas shows that parents are saying that feeding their children is one of the stresses that they're dealing with. You're a parent yourself. What is your take about this issue?
I'll start. I have maybe 3 things I would say. One, yesterday I met a friend who is a teacher. Both the mother and the father are teachers in private schools. And she told me that the husband that is on Tuesday received a letter from the school saying that they have terminated payment. They will not pay them anything because now schools cannot open anymore. I mean, they are not operating. Therefore, she said the husband came in and was quiet the whole day till evening, until the following day. The wife would ask, "What is wrong, honey?" He was not talking. So later on in the night is when she woke her up and told her to sit down and told her that I don't have an income right now. Now, this is somebody who lives in a flat where they have to pay about 15 to 20,000. A wife who is also a teacher on actually half salary, and they're supposed to cater for their children. She was telling me that she doesn't know what to do to help the husband because the man already is depressed. The following day in the morning, he got on his motorbike and just rode and went. Okay, so later on he came back, yes. But you can see the situation of what is happening right now when it comes that you are unable to take care of your children. You're unable to provide the basic. He is a man and he is not able to pay rent for his children. Like Dr. said earlier, you're unable to feed them, you're unable to provide for them their basic needs. Now that becomes very, very, very traumatizing to any man or any parent when you're unable to feed your children, you're unable to provide medical care, and you feel less of a man or a person. So those are very key and fundamental issues that are happening right now. In fact, the middle income, quote unquote, people are the ones who need to be provided for by the feeding programs that are happening, because you're staying in these particular houses, you're keeping to yourself. You don't want to show yourself that you are unable to make it. You don't want to move. That's why you're ending up seeing people are committing suicide. People are going out into alcohol and GBV. In fact, I was telling my friend, if your husband was not born again, because we go to church together, I think that day you'll have had it with the question, because she's really talkative. You'll have had it with the questions you're asking. So GBV and issues of providing for your children, if you're unable to do that and you're having a partner that's asking you questions, you end up getting that. Okay? Then the second thing I want to talk about on mental health. When I was growing up, I'm a firstborn, and I felt the responsibility of being a first child very heavy on me. I was supposed to act in a certain manner. I was supposed to take responsibility in a certain manner. And it really, I had to be there. My parents kept on telling me, I love my mom, and if she's watching, I really appreciate her because I'm speaking about her right now. She was a teacher, disciplinarian, and I took the brunt of it. I had to be straight. I had to walk in a certain way, and that went all the way to school. Teachers expected a certain way from me. So I ended up living in a shed, covering up. I desired to go and play kati. I desired to do this, but I could not do because I was expected to behave in a certain way. That really affected me when I was growing up. It affected me to a point that one time I took my bag and tried to run away from home because I was really tired. Everything was like namadi, 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 you know. So that can also affect seriously children when it comes to mental health. It affected me. It made me even up to date. I still feel so much responsibility over my siblings, responsibility at my workplace. I feel I need to be able to accomplish certain things, even if I'm feeling like I'm being pressed. So I kind of press my feelings. I press so that I can be able to stand up for others as a firstborn. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Namadi, for sharing that particular story there. Having been, or rather still, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, at some point, being a firstborn is not an easy thing, and I feel you, because being a firstborn, you also take up the role. You are actually the litmus test for your parents to do all that they can when they're raising other children. So I feel indeed, you've said that the middle class is suffering in silence. And before we rope in the doctor who is still online, that is Dr. Margaret Orlando, to just expound on this issue, how about to get one more contributor into this conversation so that now we can engage the great doctor with that particular issue. But the take home from Namadi is that there are a lot of expectations, especially for firstborns while they're growing up, as well as now currently with the current situation, is that the middle class is suffering in silence. Now crossing over to Christopher. Good morning, Christopher. How are you?
Morning. How are you? Thank you.
Great to have you on board. Thank you for your time. Tell us where you're live from.
Live from Nairobi.
Good. Now, you've heard the conversation and how it has been panning out. What do you have to say in regard to just this issue of mental wellness?
Thank you. First of all, I would want to say that it is timely, and in fact, in the course of the week, I had some discussion with Tim, who is one of my mentors, and the issue that we were raising was thinking of having a session where parents can talk about some of these things that are affecting us. And he did mention to me that, by the way, on Thursday, we'll be having a discussion on mental health. I say, wow, then I need to participate, because my background, I'm a counselor by profession. And some of these issues that we are seeing, and there are things that are there, they are real. They are real. And one of the challenges that we have had as a country is that the counseling profession has not been taken seriously. So you see that people are suffering. They do not want to go and speak to a counselor. Like Daktari says that, no, when you tell these people, no, go and speak, they wonder, what do I go and tell somebody? Why should I tell somebody my secret? So, you know, from that perspective, you find that so many people are hurting and they don't want to speak out. And it boils down even to young people right now. And you find that the challenges that we are facing, for example, I'm a parent and I have a candidate in my house. And, you know, these people are being told that, you know, there'll be no exam this year. And they're talking about next year. Remember, in terms of preparation for exams, there are a number of preparations. There's that psychological preparation where the child knows that by the end of this year, I'll no longer be a primary child. I'll be moving to high school. Or I'll no longer be a high school person. I'll be going to a college. Now, that psychological preparation is there, regardless of whether the syllabus is finished or not finished, whether I'm ready or not ready. But I just feel that, you know, I'm beyond this level. I need to move. Now, managing that, it becomes a challenge. Mm-hmm. You know, right now, as a country, we are talking about the syllabus. Now, who is there who is helping this child to cope up with this psychological dilemma? Where, you know, I'm not going to move to the next level next year. And now we are thinking about the syllabus is not finished. I know when you talk to some of them, they'll tell you, no, you know me, I'm ready. Let it come. Now, ready psychology in terms of moving to the next level. So that is, those are some of the issues that, these young people are struggling with. But I want to thank the government at least for acknowledging that this is a problem, that we need now to move to the next level, and we need now to appreciate the work that Daktari and the rest of us are doing in trying to address some of these things. But now we need to look at it from this perspective. How do we cope up with the challenges that are there? Because challenges will be there. And Daktari will tell you, unless we don't push, you are not pushed, you might not even move. If there are not these stresses that come along, it might not be, you might not move to the next level. But now, how do you cope up with these stresses that come along your way? So these are the things that are there.
That is the direction that we need to take. Thank you very much, Christopher, for your contribution there, saying that he's in the counseling profession and says that it hasn't been taken seriously. Now we cross over to Dr. Margaret Lande, who's a psychologist. One question here that has been highlighted by Christopher is that, the preparedness, the level of preparedness that candidates had, some of them and some of the parents who've been sharing have said that their children were saying, it's now sinking that they have lost 1 year. Especially now within the African setup, we know that young boys go through rites of passage, and one of them happens to be circumcision, and this is usually done when they're transiting from primary school to secondary school, or rather high school. This is not going to happen this year because the exams have been postponed to the next year. This is a wasted year. But Madam Daktari, how then can parents deal with that, anxiety that will come from that lack of transition? What would you tell to parents who are facing that current dilemma at this point?
Thank you. I like what Christopher brought about counseling and the misunderstanding that is there that prevents people from going for counseling. What we've been struggling with is maybe the way counseling was introduced in this country makes people feel that, or even mental illness, because whenever you tell someone to go for counseling, they think you are looking at them as people who are, to use the layman's word, mad. This person is thinking that I'm mad, So when they take themselves and put themselves in that corner, then they will not, agree to go for counseling, which is the only way that can help them to cope. So probably as counselors, maybe we need to go back to the drawing board and redefine what is counseling. What does it help people with? Is it just mad people who go to see, a psychiatrist or a counselor? So when that definition is properly done and, people are educated, people are not really educated about counseling. People fear even to be known that they are doing counseling. In fact, I know those who probably this time round are happy maybe to talk to a counselor through, Zoom or any other way, have conferences, but not really be seen. They would rather not their faces be seen on one-to-one. But counseling is just helping you to cope with a situation in which you yourself, you are overwhelmed. You don't even know what to do. You are stressed about it, disturbed about it. And so you want some to hear it from a professional view. What is it that I am going through? So I really like what Christopher has brought about. And I also want us to delve a bit about education and, young people and the fact that they are now staying at home. Their plans have been, the disruption that has just come all of a sudden, that up to March, these students prepared very well psychologically and emotionally, and they were all prepared to do their exams. For example, they know that we are home for such a period, and then now next we will go to school, and then all of a sudden they are being told to go home. They cannot meet their friends, they cannot talk to their friends the way they used to talk to. Their parents are like watching over them 24 hours. they find themselves in a corner that psychologically brings some sort of emotional stress. Where am I caged here? Yeah. So this, and then the anxiety of tomorrow. I was expecting that maybe I'm in a university. When I complete, I look for a job and, go to the next level in my life. I'm in Form 4. I was ready to do my exams. I've prepared, I've been reading, all this, and all this has been just all of a sudden cut off. Where does that one take that child? And who is there to talk to that child, to talk to such a person, to tell them it is well? No one prepared for COVID-19. It is a situation, it's a global pandemic where we have found ourselves. So that's why I said even earlier that we need counseling even in schools. We need to tell them that it is okay to lose a year or so, or to lose months, because it is something that is beyond us. But students are just overwhelmed. They are just on their own. And so I was looking at what are the solutions that we can take. Because if you are in Nairobi, maybe where the internets are good, these people are going on with their studies. How about that child at home? In the rural areas where even there's no internet. What can the government do so that they are also roped in, so that they are not losing, because the disruption is just too much for them and they are overwhelmed. How about delivering, low technology where it is necessary so that they can also go to school? How about having textbooks taken to centers where, in the rural areas, so that children also go on with their studies? Okay. All this has overwhelmed the young people.
Young people now, Dr. Before we get to look at the recommendations that you're going to give us, just some of the tidbits, for parents who are handling such an issue at home with the students, with the school calendar now probably put on hold. Let's hear from Charlene. Good morning, Charlene. How are you?
I'm good.
Great. County 001, Mombasa, right? Great to see you. You're looking nice. Now we are ready to come to Mombasa. Yeah, the cessation of movement just ceased. You should expect the buses, the SGR, and the domestic flights to start coming. So exactly where in Mombasa are you?
Right now I'm still in Nairobi, but I'm yet to travel within this coming week.
Oh, so you're traveling to Mombasa. Great. Now, you've had the contributions from, Katha, Murad, Timothy, Jackie, around this issue of mental wellness. I'd want to hear from you. What do you have to say in regard to mental wellness? Have you found yourself in a situation where you felt overwhelmed about something, gave you anxiety and stress over it? Maybe you can share?
Yeah, sure. If you look at me closely, like my eye are not the same. I have one that is quite impaired, and like the other. So this was a different turn for me way back in 2012 when I was still in class 6. Just on a normal day, I was going to participate in a debate at Sacred Heart in Mombasa. Then my eyes just got itchy a bit. I thought it was something normal, so we only 50 bob had to do all this damage because I needed a quick medication to get back to school. So we went to a chemist and bought the wrong medication. We thought it was the one because the specialist told us that it's going to work to avoid the itchiness. So that was it. Up to date, it changed me because I remember it was on a Thursday till Saturday. My eye turned. I could not see with it. Up to now, I'm using one eye. It made me become an introvert. I had a lot of stress because meeting people, being in a class where I'm the only one who has this eye challenge, and it's not like I was born this, so it's something that came up abrupt when I was still in school at an adolescent stage where you really want to look good, ravishing, and all that. So it was a big challenge. It caused me a lot of trauma. At times, I'm still recovering, but trying to accept myself, like this is how I'm going to be. I have to be using glasses, I have to use one eye. It was not an easy thing.
Thank you for sharing, Charlene. We are going to talk about, just how, your coping mechanisms. We have Daktari online, Dr. Margaret Olande, who's going to share, just what you need to do to just get back your self-esteem. Because in as much as this has happened, you have a whole life future ahead of you, and it is definitely out there for you to just grab it. Let's listen in to our next guest to just give us their feedback in regard to mental wellness. Next on line is, good morning, the producer is getting that particular name, yes. Hey, Martha Oguna, great to see you. How are you?
Thank you. Hi, Ray.
Great. That is County 01, yes? 001?
Yes, it is.
Good.
Yes.
Now, Martha, what do you have to say in regard to just issues of mental wellness? Have you had an experience you'd want to share?
One of the things that I would say is that mental wellness does not know titles. Personally, I've gone through postnatal depression, and imagine even being in the health profession, I still did not recognize that I had mental health, or rather I did not accept it. And actually I had the postnatal depression for both children. And this is not easy to just accept that you have to see a psychiatrist, to see a counselor. And this is something that we don't accept as a society.
Now, the postnatal depression, I know, especially when that comes in, especially where mothers are concerned, you also start questioning, is that, isn't it, I'm not a good mother? How come I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, and yet this is a bundle of joy that I'm holding in my hands? So how did you get over it, Martha?
In fact, many times I had the feelings of this is a bundle of trouble for me. But for me, I think I would say that I was lucky, my husband being also in the medical profession. He is the one actually who noticed that there's something that totally is not right, because I did not want the child. I did not want to associate myself with the child. And anytime the child would wake up to cry, I would wake up and just walk off to the sitting room. So having a very a caring partner, and a partner who actually worked with me, had some bit of help for me to even recognize that I needed help to go to hospital and all that. Otherwise, sometimes you go through these things, and even having the knowledge, you don't accept that this is a challenge or this is a problem.
So for you, it's the support system that you had there that helped you cope with that particular issue. And I like what you said, is that even being within the medical, the medical field, is that mental illness does not, it's not about, it cuts across board. The old, the young, professionals, rich, poor, everyone is either susceptible to this particular, mental illness. From where you sit, and I'm sure you've handled quite a number of cases, what advice would you give to someone who is watching, especially just a young mother, maybe especially first-time parents, or those who have had, they found themselves pregnant, and maybe they had already started taking contraceptives, they had said they're done with giving birth. What advice would you give them?
The advice I would give is that it's good for you to accept health, and to know the triggers that come with any postnatal depression, especially once you start having any withdrawal signs to your own child, or feelings of lack of interest to taking care of the child, or your daily any daily things that you do, you start having disinterest in them, or they are now bothering you. It's usually a trigger. And this more, I would say, also to the people who are actually around women who are pregnant or giving birth. It's good to actually, they're the ones who can easily recognize whether this person has an issue, and to just tell them to seek help, or to take them to seek some help. Because were it not for my husband, for me, even just going to the psychiatrist, I had clearly known, being taken to Dr. So-and-so, I knew, why are you taking me there? Because it means I'm mad. So these are some of the things that we need to walk through with the people who are closest to us, to know that it's not like it's It's something that is a disease that cannot go away. It's something that is manageable.
We need to change our perceptions in terms of seeking help, especially when it comes to mental illness. That has been our contributor, Martha Gunnar from County 001 there, just saying that she underwent a postnatal depression and her support structure, that is her husband, helped her get through it, though she was a bit resistant and hesitant because she knew what she's going through, but she just, this is a state of mind. Now let's get our next contributor as we work. Okay, now apparently now we in our meeting room this morning. That is now. Let's go back to Dr. Margaret Olande, who is a psychologist, and as we wind down this particular conversation, Daktari, pertinent questions have come out, especially the issue. Kenyans want to know what are the triggers for mental illness. Let's begin from there. Triggers that we can all look out for.
Thank you. But before we go to triggers, maybe I want to appreciate Charlene for coming out and sharing what she has been going through. The fact that she had that impaired and now.
Well, we are trying to work on your video, Daktari, there, and yes, Charlene's case, we are still going to answer it, but there's a question that we've decided. Let's talk about the triggers first, then we talk about Charlene, because the issue of recovery and self-esteem, so that we can identify how we can, stay away from this, and now tackle the issue of Charlene, and also mention about the issue of postnatal depression. The video is in the right position now. Over to you, Daktari.
Triggers are just anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, anything that you cannot deal with. When you cannot deal with a situation, and you become anxious, you panic. You don't even know what to do with yourself. So when anxiety comes, then that is one. And anxiety is one of the triggers. Being able to cope is also one of the triggers. Sometimes a type of illness, you can go through an illness that takes you off your course. You are geared to do something that you knew that by this time I will have finished. Like right now that children are at home, losing a job can be a trigger because it causes stress, and that stress, if it is not properly or medically managed, it can lead to a depression. So those are also triggers and also pointers. So whenever one finds trauma, we go through a trauma, maybe it's not you who is, in that situation, but maybe a parent, someone you love so much, losing someone, going through, like maybe you had an accident and you are part of your leg or part of your body has to be amputated. Those are the triggers. Just finding yourself in a situation where you are emotionally and psychologically overwhelmed, that can trigger mental illness. Being unable to cope, being anxious, being in a very stressful
situation, anything that makes you anxious and overwhelming sense of incapacity to cope.
So much. We worry about tomorrow, about your children, about your husband. Being, diseases that have no cure, like maybe cancer, or even being attacked, or even being raped. You find yourself, you have been raped, or for a lady, becoming pregnant in the middle of your career or school. All those are circumstances that causes you to be able to cope and to be overwhelmed. So those are the triggers. Some of the triggers. Triggers are many.
Now, Dr. Let me take you back to Charlene's case. She shared her, her experience is that now she has an eye impairment, but she was not born that way. And she mentioned that that was a mistake, a 50 shilling mistake that she's still recovering from. Issues of low self-esteem. Advice to Charlene and those who are still struggling with issues of low self-esteem, Dr.
So Charlene, thank you so much for sharing. As a lady, one can just imagine what this has done to your self-esteem. You mentioned that it was just a question of 50 bob. I don't know whether you said that you did not have the money, because then that will take us to social, economic issues of maybe poverty or something like that. But that was not clear. I think what you said that was clear was that you were given a wrong medicine. But it goes with that, because had you gone to a proper doctor, perhaps you would not be who you are today. But then that this is an emotional, that this causes emotional stress, because you're just imagining, if I was able to go to a proper, medical person, I would still have my eyes they used to be. My self-esteem would not have been lowered, and all these emotions are so overwhelming. Because this has to do with your character. This is a character trait. It has taken you to who you were not, before, and people are looking at you, and you tend to think that everyone is judging you. Everyone is saying, look at that girl. I cannot date this girl. But may I affirm you today that you are so beautiful. You are who you are today. You can do whatever you want to do in life. You can achieve your goals. You don't have to look down upon yourself. And when you feel overwhelmed, I don't know whether you went for counseling, but when you feel overwhelmed, please just go for counseling, because this is quite overwhelming. It is an emotional state of mind. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you very much, Dr. for that insight in regard to Charlene's issue, and all those who might be struggling with issues of low esteem. How about, because we've been getting feedback in regard to that particular conversation that we're having, and as we wind down this particular conversation, I'd want to take you to David Mbogo Gatundu there. He was asking, what are the major causes of mental illness? Dr. there has explained, and the triggers basically is anything that makes you anxious. That is what Dr. Margaret Lande has said, who happens to be a psychologist who's been taking us through this conversation. Martha Oguna, mental illness does not recognize your title or social status. Anyone is prone to it, but few accept even the diagnosis. So we need to change the perception around, just issues of mental illness. Now, Yato from Embu County says children need protection from parents and guardians. Parents ought to spend time with their children, talk and encourage them, as well as assure them of their safety. Thank you very much, Yato there. Still keeping up with your feedback on Twitter, and we appreciate that you have been coming through and just sharing your views in regard to this. But Benjamin Chariot, he says he is tuned. Thank you very much for having kept his company. While Winnie Miner says mental illness is a silent killer and should be taken more seriously, and identifying the same and getting correct support to overcome it. It is a need in this country. Now, as we wind up this show, remember there have been calls to the public to declare mental illness as a public health crisis. Once this is done, indeed, it will get the attention that is required. And just a take home from our resident, participant here, Dr. Margaret Lande, is that, we need to take counseling seriously, and people need to know that sharing is caring. You check in onto that friend who you've not seen for a while. How about we just show you everyone who's been participating in this conversation? Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Timothy. Thank you, Namadi. Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Shalene. Thank you, Nkatha. Thank you, Daktari. Thank you very much, Purity Mora. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you for being on board and just sharing your experiences and just adding into this topical conversation. Thank you very much. We had two Moras there. Now we can wave at each other. I mean, this is a beauty of being on technology. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. Thank you for taking time. Say hi to your children, especially we've missed some of the children here, Ariana especially, and she has been good that she has not switched off the mother's Wi-Fi today. Thank you very much, everyone who's has made this possible. Thank you very much for your time. Indeed, this was quite timely. Remember, there have been calls to President Uhuru Kenyatta to declare mental illness a public health crisis. The report handed over to the president indicates that one in every 10 Kenyans has one form of mental disorder. Remember, our take home this morning is anything that makes you anxious is a trigger for mental, disorder. Keep safe, stay safe. We will survive this situation. I'm Regina Manyara. Thank you for your time.
There is nothing more powerful than beauty. We all feel it when we see it. Recently, the Trust for Indigenous Culture and Health, TICA, hosted Urembo, which means beauty, and Hekima, which means wisdom, exhibitions at the National Museums of Kenya. Urembo was curated by a group of contemporary Kenyan artists led by Eric Manya and Mary Ogembo, whereas Hekima was curated by Agan Odero Agan.
Kenyan art practice as one of the main principles. And in that, we're looking at how the emerging artists are doing now, what our elder artists used to do, how they use their experiences, and we're trying to figure out a way, such a way that both can have conversations between and within. The second principle, of course, it's beauty. And Africa is beauty, as in it's very beautiful. Almost everything we touch is very beautiful.
The Urembo exhibition explored beauty symbols, colors, designs, and their meanings over time.
Each and every artwork that I receive, I do justice to it in terms of how it's displayed. I get the power from it, as in wherever I put it, it makes sense to, one, to the artist, and two, of course, to the people who are coming to see it and experience it. We want people to draw knowledge from all these old artifacts. And we've brought in quite a number of elderly artists. We've brought in quite a number of elders from different communities, and we want people to draw a lot of knowledge from them. Some of the artifacts on the walls, it's these elders that know how they were used.
Sain Wadu and Eunice Wadu, who are celebrated artists in Kenya and abroad, were handy to offer their advice.
I was able to be a teacher, which did not please me. I was able to be a court clerk, it did not please me. So what was pleasing me? That was my consciousness. I needed something that has to be roaring out of me, not coming like a tape reverse and then tape replay. Creativity, something that was more creative. So as a parent, you force it to the child, but that is not where the child exactly will fit, because you qualified with a BEd, you qualified with an engineer, but in the final end, you find yourself shifting to another field that you feel is more appropriate to you. It's not bad, but usually forcing it is like trying to, doesn't help, because I'll do it half-heartedly.
Art is a very, very, very good medicine, because if personally I am in a stress mood, I start playing with the colors, with those knives. Whatever was disturbing me will come out naturally. due to customs, some children are not able to express themselves. When they are distressed, they don't speak. But when you give them the art materials, they'll express themselves very freely without being pushed to do it, and whatever is disturbing them will come to an end.
Through their initiative in Naivasha, Sain Wadu Art Trust, the duo have debunked the myths associated with art.
Give freedom to the children to do what they love most, because sometimes art is regarded as abnormal field, abnormal professions. It is a profession like any other. I was inspired by my husband and a friend. By then we were not married. I could read. I could read through the painting he has done. So the message he was trying to pass, I could read it. And from there, I decided I also want to express myself through the pieces that I can create. And then I did it. And of course, I've exhibited like almost all over the world. They are published in some books, art books. So really, I've struggled.
And then I have to look at this picture of mine. Where else would I like to have a color white?
The influence that has given me is my personal satisfaction. Because like you say, the Arts Trust, I've been working with village kids, children, and I've worked with them until I've had people maturing into adults and earning through art that we have taught them. So that's a bit of, I love it because it's part of our selves now, seeing like we are qualified out. Yeah, we have already pushed the seeds out. Yeah.
Every Saturday morning, that's a day I've volunteered myself with my husband and family. That's our 10%. We give it to the community. We work with the children. And I'm so happy working when I give back to my community, because this is a God-given talent.
Witnessing how Indigenous apprenticeship and community stewardship can and do inform artistic practice today. Hence, connecting our past and present was